Tonight's meeting will begin in approximately 5 minutes.
That's good. You'll be fine.
Tonight's meeting will begin in approximately 1 minute. Tonight's meeting will begin in approximately 1 minute. Tonight's meeting will begin in approximately 1 minute. Tonight's meeting will begin in 1 minute. We'll begin in 30 seconds. Tonight's meeting will begin in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome all my fellow school board members and call the December 12th, 2017 school board member meeting to order. On behalf of my colleagues, I'd like to thank all of you who are in attendance with us in person or watching the meeting from the luxury of your own home or another location, but mostly for investing your time and energy to join us this evening. We truly applaud your commitment to partnering with us in support of our schools, our students, our staff, and our community. And while the board and Brevard Public School staff members are fully committed to doing our best to ensure excellence in Brevard Public Schools every single day, we know that our success depends heavily on an engaged and committed community to work alongside us and help us to continually improve. Thank you for being active participants in this process. Pam, roll call, please.
Mrs. Belford?
Present.
Mr. Craig?
Present.
Mrs. Deskovich?
Present.
Mr. Susan?
Present.
And Mr. Ziegler?
Present.
Thank you. This evening, Matt Reed, Assistant Superintendent of Government and Community Relations, will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As per our custom, I'd like to offer my fellow board members and Dr. Blackburn the opportunity to recognize any staff, students, or community members at this time. Where do we want to start? Mr. Ziegler?
Thank you, Mr. Craig. So I'd like to thank Mr. Potter, the principal of Central Middle School, for inviting in a speaker this morning to speak to their 8th graders, Chris Hollyfield, a homegrown Brevardian who delivered a great message this morning to our students on respect. A lot of our principals are working really hard to bring important messages to our students in respect and friendship and, you know, anti-bullying and suicide prevention and all that. And one of the interesting things that I've observed, and I know that a lot of board members and staff have observed a lot of these speakers, is that the effectiveness of a message is proportional to how much the students pay attention. And that's always been a challenge. I was absolutely blown away this morning by Chris Hollyfield in that he had 100% of their attention. When he paused, you could hear a pin drop in that place. And then afterwards, there were more questions than we knew what to do with, and the kids didn't want to leave. So thank you to Chris and to Mr. Potter at Central Middle School for such an incredible program for our students. That's all I have for today. Thank you.
Ms. Belford? Ms. Belford?
Thank you, Mr. Craig. A couple of things, actually. Mr. Ziegler and Dr. Blackburn and Mr. Susan and myself attended the FSBA annual conference the end of November. And I have shared with you all some of that information, but wanted to thank them. You know, there was a time when we didn't necessarily come back with a really good feeling of value received when leaving the FSBA conferences, but they really have done a good job to turn things around and make it very worthwhile to be there. Later in the meeting, I'll give some information on our legislative update. Serving on the legislative committee and the advocacy committee for FSBA, they provided a lot of great information. So I'll share that later in a report on that. But certainly wanted to thank both FSBA for that and also thank the board for the opportunity for us to participate in those learning opportunities. Had the opportunity to join Coquina Elementary with their holiday spectacular, and it was so cute because they took the students over to the Titusville High School auditorium, and so the students were able to perform on the big stage at the auditorium. And they have really built a significant program at Coquina for their music program, for their strings program and their chorus. And it really is because the principal has been very creative in how she makes that accessible to her students that can't necessarily stay after school to participate in those programs. So really great to see them, and man, were they incredibly talented. That was a lot of fun. On the 6th, several of us attended the Space Coast Association of Realtors Appreciation Luncheon and wanted to give them a shout out, of course, thanking them for hosting us, also for all that they do for our community. The Space Coast Association of Realtors works closely with our foundation, sponsors numerous different need-based events in our district and helping students who may be homeless or in special need. And so we thank them for all of that support. Also had the opportunity to attend the Manatee Elementary Blue Ribbon Celebration, so want to congratulate them again on that. They had a wonderful celebration at the school where their chorus students also performed, and they were very good as well. So I'd like to thank them for the opportunity to be there with them for that celebration. And then two last things. One, and I think I've mentioned it before, our BFT retirees do an amazing program for our schools that they call Books and Bears. And want to especially mention it right now as we may be clearing out for the holidays and getting rid of things that our children don't need anymore. They pair children's books with stuffed animals and hand them out at the schools. They were at Oak Park a couple of weeks ago. They have been, I was actually with Fran Bear the other day, and I think she said they've been through 30 Title I schools in the district, delivering Books and Bears to kindergarten and sometimes first graders. So wonderful, wonderful program. We'd like to thank them for bringing that to our schools, but also want to put a shout out to all of you out there listening that if you have those items around your home, we can certainly repurpose them to benefit our students. So don't hesitate to reach out here to the district office or to your local schools, and I'm sure they can coordinate getting it there. And then one very last one, and this I think is just indicative of the type of passion that we see in our schools from our teachers, from our administrators, and from all of our staff members. I received a request for this particular shout out from a staff member who said, hey, can you give some recognition to these particular individuals that did just a great thing? So the MEMS Christmas Parade was a couple of weeks ago, and there was a student who was not going to be able to participate in the parade because he did not have black pants. So he had worn black shorts, which was the best that he had, but he didn't have black pants for the parade, and so he was sidelined, basically pretty upset that he wasn't going to be able to participate. And there were two people who came out and saw him. One was Corey Hurst, which is the principal of Riviera Elementary, who is not even near MEMS, for those of you who are familiar with the county. But she was up there helping. And then Brittany Joseph, who Corey Hurst was helping with the event. So they saw the little boy upset. They jumped in their car. They ran to the closest store and grabbed 2 pairs of pants, hoping that one would fit him. Brought them back. One of the pants did fit. He was able to participate in the parade. Not only did it bring a huge smile to his face, but his peers were so excited that he was going to be able to participate with them. So I think sometimes we forget those little things. We tend to celebrate big things and forget some of those little random acts, but those things are taking place in our district all the time. So to all of the staff members and teachers and parents and administrators who go that extra mile, thank you. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Ms. Belford. Ms. Deskovich?
I just have a couple. One, shout out to Matt Reed and his department for the BPS at the Magic Game Nights. I hear we have over 650 employees employees and families that chose to attend, which was, according to the gentleman we spoke with at the Magic Game, the largest group that they've had. One family of 21, am I right on that, Mr. Reed, was able to attend, rode the school buses over. We drove ourselves, but my kids had fun waving and dabbing to other kids on the school bus of the family of 21. So it was a really fun night to show BPS spirit. It was fun to see a lot of my teacher friends out there with their families enjoying the Magic Game. So I hope we'll be able to do that again, Mr. Reed. Also, just like Mr. Ziegler said, I attended the speaking engagement this morning at Central, but last week, West Shore, Mr. Fleming hosted Mark Merrow, another really inspirational speaker, a gentleman who's overcome addiction and been through a lot of family tragedy and has pulled himself up. And dare I say there wasn't a dry eye in the place when he spoke. And so I really appreciate our principals that are taking the time. And I think at West Shore, too, they actually put together a council of students and some parents, and they all selected who they wanted to come speak. So he reached out into his community. He brought in someone he thought would reach that student body, and I think it was very effective. And so I'm thankful to the board for prioritizing the funds to help with that, and to Mr. Fleming for organizing it and bringing in an inspirational speaker. I really think these workshops, or what would be the word, the assemblies that our schools are doing are having the impact that we want to have on our students. So I am thankful for that. I want to shout out to Dr. Blackburn for his community engagement. This past 2 weeks alone, I know he's reached into some groups that maybe he wouldn't ordinarily associate with to bring the message of BPS and to listen. And I've attended a couple of them, and his message is, I'm here to listen to the community and what they want for our schools. And so I appreciate him taking the time in the evenings and on weekends to do that. And the other ones have all been mentioned so far. That's all I've got. Thanks.
Thank you, Tina. Mr. Susan?
The first thing I had to say is that I'm so proud of the HBCA for right before Thanksgiving, we had an opportunity where Carlos from the Boys and Girls Club in Temple Terrace had pointed out the fact that a lot of our kids don't get fed over Thanksgiving because they don't have the funds. And in actuality, they don't get fed over weekends and spring breaks and summers in some cases. So some of our Boys and Girls Clubs are feeding some of those kids along with a lot of the other areas. So we with the HBCA put together, I made a big ask. They came out with, paid for 16 turkeys. And I took some of the district tables and chairs and we laid them all out in Temple Terrace's basketball court. And teachers from O'Galley, Johnson, Croton came out along with HBCA contractors and everybody else, and we fed about 160 kids. And they were taking bags home afterwards. That was just a great moment to see all of the community come together in that fast of time, and to see 16 turkeys that are about 30 pounds each get cooked and fed. So that was the first one. Next thing is I do want to say how proud I am for Ms. Belford for many different ways. The first one is that you have no idea when we go to these meetings, she is literally taking copious notes, and then we get an email with everything to the point where we just need to send Ms. Belford and not actually go because she does such a good job. I will tell you that the first time I saw it was at the School Boards Association, and then we were at the Realtors meeting the other day, and I looked down and I'm like, she's taking notes on the port. Like the guy's giving a presentation on the port and she's taking notes. So I wanted to give you a shout out for doing that and being copious, because some other people in this room may not do that. So I want to say thank you for that. The next thing I wanted to do was say thank you to Ms. Deskovich, because right after the Realtors meeting, they reached out and said, hey, we've got $15,000 in grants. And she said, Matt, this is up your area. What do you think? And I said, man, let me think about it. So I contacted the Historical Homes Society, and they're going to use our construction schools to fix up 4 old buildings that would add property value throughout the county, bringing on the Williams House in Rockledge and a couple other ones that just need a little bit more. So kids will take this money and it'll be supplies, and our construction schools will volunteer their time to come help with those projects. So that was a big thing, and I wanted to say thank you for handing that off and doing such a good job there. I did want to say I'm proud of the city of Rockledge. I met with the city manager along with the police chief and a couple other people, and they talked about how great of a job they're doing up there and how BPS is really working with them. Traffic flow and all the other issues that they have there with security and everything is just, with their grant that they've written for SROs, they're doing some amazing things inside of our schools. I wanted to do a shout out to the city manager and the police chief. I wanted to say, I see some of the SGA kids here, and I was at Timber Creek last weekend where the SGA district conference was with hundreds of schools. And I will tell you, I taught for 9 years, and I have never seen a moment like that before in my life. I have never seen thousands of kids engaged like that before. And I'm not lying to you. When they were doing the dances and stuff up on the stage and then they were doing the shout outs, I was like, this is crazy, the energy that was inside there. They actually mobilized and passed a resolution for our CPR bill, and they're going back to their schools and they're going to start contacting their legislators across the state of Florida to get that thing across the finish line. So I was just so proud of your organization and what you guys do. I did speak at the AVID conference, and I was so proud to see Dr. Sullivan there. It's amazing what you're trying to do in our district. We are leading. When I got up there on the panel with school board members from across the nation, when you start talking about, they're bragging about getting one demonstration school, and I think we have 3, correct? That's right, 3 demonstration schools, and what AVID does for our school system is just absolutely phenomenal. And I had to applaud her and many of the others that are part of the organization. And I wanted to say thank you, Dr. Thetty, because Dr. Thetty has put together, we tasked her with putting together a lot of what you see with a lot of the social, emotional, and the suicide awareness. And she has really been working behind the scenes with Bill Maharis and others to try to make these things come to fruition. So we come up here and talk about Mr. Hollifield and all these other speakers and everybody else, but behind the scenes, that's Dr. Thetty trying to line that up, and she deserves a big, big credit for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Susan. Normally I'd ask Dr. Blackburn, but I think I'll hold off and give my notes first because I know he's got a little bit longer one here in a second. Quickly, I was honored to attend along with Dr. Sullivan, the Edgewood Junior Senior High School Blue Ribbon Field Day. The students chose not to have an actual formal ceremony. Instead, they had an afternoon where they enjoyed games and outdoor activities and ice cream and a whole bunch of stuff, and it was a lot of fun. Really cool to walk around and talk to a bunch of the kids and just see them enjoying their celebration. So thank you for inviting us. Thank you to Jackie and Grata for all she's doing at Edgewood. And the partnership with the community is just huge in Central Merritt Island there. Over the last few weeks, I know that you've probably gotten tired of me talking about the JROTC Raider teams, but I just thought I'd report from the state championships from last weekend that the Vieira High School female Raider team got the second place in the state in their competition. So congratulations to Lieutenant Colonel Tim Thomas and the entire Raider team over at Vieira. Really a great organization, and for all the teams that participated this year. On the same note, Cocoa football, once again representing us fantastically over in Orlando. Came up a little short this year, but as usual, Coach Wilkinson and his entire team were gracious, were professional, and really truly represented what I think student athletes are meant to represent. If you listen to any of their discussion after the game and a couple of their interviews, once again, our young men truly represent this district well. And thanks to Rashad Wilson and his leadership over at Cocoa. In a few minutes, Ms. Zerker, our CFO, who's doing a wonderful job, is going to give us a presentation. We are voting tonight to approve the CAFR, or Combined Annual Financial Report. Her staff is just doing an amazing job. Hopefully everybody has been able to take a look at the new financial statements and how they're being put out. It makes things a lot easier to read. I'm a picture guy. I love pictures. There's a lot of pictures and a lot of graphs, and so I appreciate that, Ms. Zerker. And thank you to you and your entire staff for the many hours that you put into fixing those things up. The last thing I wanted to say was usually we do moments of silence for people that we lose in our Brevard Public School community, and we didn't do one tonight because this person didn't work for the district. But if many of you who are from the Cocoa Beach area ever knew Les Stafford, he was a 52-year volunteer at Cocoa Beach Junior Senior High School, and we lost him just after Thanksgiving. Just to put his accomplishments in context, in those 52 years, he amassed over 111,000 volunteer hours. And those were just volunteer hours that are documented, not just ones that he just showed up and did anyway. He was the 6-time Volunteer of the Year for the entire district, and the school named their Lifetime Achievement Award for him. So I just want to recognize Les Stafford, his family, the impact that he has made in the Cocoa Beach student body over the last 52 years is not only legendary, but just simply amazing, and it is so appreciated. My daughter's a student there, and you know, the sheet posters that went up on the fence line after his passing were recognized by every student there. So thank you to Les, and God bless you, Les, and thank you for your service. Dr. Blackburn, I think it is time for your recognitions.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Board members, one of the joys or opportunities of going last is you all have already acknowledged a lot of the people I wanted to acknowledge, but just want to give a shout out to Sally Shin. I had the pleasure and the honor of accompanying Dr. Shin to the November 28th state board meeting where Brevard County was recognized for excellence in creation of opportunities for our homeless children. About 3% of our student population are documented homeless children. And if you've ever met Dr. Shin, she eats, sleeps, breathes services for our homeless children, and she creates a lot of business partnerships geared towards that population. So thank you, Dr. Shin. Very much appreciative of the opportunity to spend a day and a half at the Capitol last week with Senator Mayfield and Representatives Huckel, Fine, Goodson, saw Coach P up there, and what was met with the Senate President and the Appropriations Chair for Education and a few other key leaders. What was very, very special is that the work of Matt Reed and our lobbyists, everything that I wanted to talk about, they had already heard 3 or 4 or many. I mean, they knew our issues and our concerns and our platform very, very well. So thank you for that work. Last Friday, I believe, we were treated, absolute treat, to the chorus of Surfside Elementary School right here in this room. They came in like professionals, performed like professionals, ran right out like professionals. It all took maybe 15 minutes, but it was the absolute best show that we've seen. And Ms. Deskovich mentioned this, a few community organizations that opened their arms to my presence and for conversation and suggestion, and Liberty Caucus of Brevard and Space Coast Patriots. Just proof these conversations epitomize the opportunity for people on different sides or philosophical opinions to come together, work together on behalf of a community in a good, collaborative, meaningful way. So really appreciate that opportunity. A group of North Area bus drivers participated in the Titusville annual Christmas parade on Saturday evening. They collected donations for the entry fee and candy to pass out, so really want to say thank you to those bus drivers. Our educational technology unit was recognized and awarded this year's digital classroom plan. 38 schools competed for 12 awards. The 12 awarded schools will be receiving 300 mobile devices, so congratulations to that crew. Now on to some pretty special people that I've had the pleasure and opportunity to meet with now on a pretty regular basis. Over the last year and a half, 16 high school government presidents, vice presidents and other representatives have met with Dr. Theddy, Dr. Sullivan, and myself throughout the year to discuss many issues. They give me an education every time I have the opportunity to be with them. They have collaborated on ideas back with their student populations, and they would like to, board members, present a legislative request. They want to be added to our legislative platform. We're arranging to bring those young men and women with us in February for a day at the Capitol to present their ideas to lawmakers, right? So they'll explain all of that to you. We'll drive them up really early in the morning. We'll meet with our lawmakers. We may get an opportunity to visit the House floor or the Senate floor. I think we should give them maybe a tour of the school there in Tallahassee. The name escapes me. But on the way back, they'll get an opportunity to visit the University of Florida as well in Gainesville. So really looking forward to spending the day with them. I don't want to steal any of their thunder. I know they all want to introduce themselves to you, tell you a little bit about themselves, and then 4 of them will make a legislative ask of the board.
Hello, I'm Ferris Jabari, and I'm the student government representative from Bayside High.
Good evening, I'm Rachel Montgomery, and I'm the student government president of West Shore Junior Senior High School.
I'm Sarah Axelson. I'm the student body president of Cocoa Beach High School.
Good evening. I'm Danielle Mortis. I'm the student government president at Vieira High School.
Hi, I'm Cheyenne Charles, and I'm the senior class president at O'Galley High.
Hi, I'm Emmy Estes. I'm the SGA president at Titusville High School.
Hi, I'm Eliana Murray, and I am astronaut senior class vice president.
Hi, my name is Wyatt Walker, and I'm the senior council president at Maryland High School.
Hi, my name is Margaret Ward, and I'm the senior president at Rockledge High School.
Hello, my name is Julia Hoffman, and I'm the student body president at Satellite High School.
Hello, my name is Emily Kernis, and I'm the student body vice president at Edgewood Junior Senior High School.
Hi, I'm Tristan Tate. I'm senior class president at Cocoa High.
Hello, my name is Kevin Tenzar, and I'm the proud senior class president of Palm Bay Magnet High School.
Good evening, I'm Aiden Pollock, and I am the senior class president of Melbourne High School.
Good evening, my name is Leah Murray, and I'm the student government president of Heritage High School.
I would first like to start off this evening by thanking everyone who has worked with the SGA representatives from each of our schools, not only having the opportunity to collaborate as a team and have our opinions and concerns be heard. It's a great privilege and honor of ours. I would like to personally thank Dr. Blackburn, Dr. Theddy, Mr. Maharis, Mr. Reed, and Dr. Sullivan. At the meetings, the number one concern, the overwhelming concern for our SGA presidents was the social and emotional well-being of our students when we discussed topics for our presentation. The following is a legislative ask developed by our high school SGA presidents, which we are submitting to the school board of Brevard County for your consideration and adding to the topics which you have already developed to present in February when we visit our legislators in Tallahassee. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, 1 in 5 children and adolescents experience a mental health problem during their whole school career. Some examples including stress, depression, anxiety, family problems, bullying, learning disabilities, and alcohol and substance abuse. Serious mental health problems such as self-injurious behaviors and suicide are on the rise, particularly among our youth. Some estimates reflect that up to 60% of all of our students do not receive the treatment they need due to the lack of access to mental health services. Therefore, reinforced by the above statistics, we would like for our legislators to create a statewide recurring appropriation of $100 million to fund the staffing of certified mental health professionals who will then be assigned to schools to adequately provide students with the social, emotional, and mental health support needed in order for them to not only increase academic success, but in addition to coping with issues they may experience on a day-to-day basis. I would like to now hand it over to my colleague Aiden Pollock to continue.
All right, so in addition to all of this, and reviewing the number of Florida high schools, it would take approximately $62 million to have one mental health professional per 2 high schools. And so we realize, though, that we would also need to have professionals available from time to time at elementary schools and middle schools because we want to help with their needs as well. So that is why we have increased the amount to $100 million to then satisfy elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools. And we know that the money would be divided within the population of our 67 school districts, but this would provide a much-needed start to dealing with the issue. With this additional staffing, students would have someone specific which they can seek out, meet with whenever they feel like in a comfortable setting, and discuss any concerns or anxiety that they may be experiencing as a student. In turn, they could receive the support, resources, and tools necessary to assist with coping with these problems. Additionally, these professionals would work with all students and school staff to provide them with information that they could use in identifying the signs of when a classmate may be experiencing some issues which reflect for their need with assistance or support if maybe a student doesn't feel comfortable going to the professional themselves. Additionally to this, we would like to provide you with some statistics in order to back why we feel this is such a prevalent issue. So these statistics are reported by the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Approximately 1 in 5 youth aged between 13 to 18, or 21.4%, experience a severe mental disorder at some point in their life. For children aged 8 to 15, the estimate is 13%. 70% of youth in the juvenile justice systems have at least one mental health condition, and just over half, 50.6%, of these children aged 8 to 15 received mental health services during the previous year. And half of all chronic mental illnesses begin by age 14. And even more alarming is the statistics that state suicide as the 3rd leading cause of death for those youth aged between 10 to 24. And after these statistics, I would like to introduce Leah Murray, who will provide a closing statement.
In closing, we feel strongly that this legislative act is an important step for our schools to take in providing the resources, tools, and support that our students need in dealing with mental health issues in addition to everyday items that life puts in front of our youth of today. Students need to know that they have someone on a permanent basis of whom they can go to during the school day to meet with and discuss anything that may be bothering them in a setting that is comfortable and conducive to their well-being. We know how important our students' social and emotional well-being is to our board, and we are provided the opportunity to present this legislative act when we visit Tallahassee in February. We wish to thank Dr. Blackburn and the school board for providing us with the opportunity to not only present this proposal to you, but for taking the time to offer us a voice and the chance to come speak with you. We're sincerely appreciative and look forward to representing the students of the Brevard County School District during our trip to Tallahassee in February. Thank you.
So this is what it's all about, really. I mean, you are leaders. You're leaders in your school, and you are now leaders in the community. And I can't thank you enough for taking your time to be here, for putting the time and effort into that presentation. And I cannot wait to see what you're going to do up in Tallahassee, because you will shake some trees up there. So I appreciate it. Any of my board members have any comments?
I'm almost speechless. Thank you. Thank you for the time and the effort, the compassion you've put into this. I am grateful. I'm behind you 150%. This is what the legislators need to see. They need to see our students coming forward with their needs and speaking. They get kind of tired of seeing the old people up there all the time screaming and yelling and begging and pleading. So it's an important issue. I'm 100% behind you. Thank you.
Yeah, very, very impressive. I love the input from students. It makes a big difference because it's a perspective that we may not see. Fortunately, we share your passion for solving these problems. Dr. Blackburn and Matt Reed, if you haven't already, if you can connect them up with Capital City to get some guidance on what the key talking points are and whether or not there's any legislation already moving with a specific legislator that might be willing to champion what they want so we can strategically help them be successful, that would be awesome.
You know, dust does not settle under Mr. Matt Reed. He's already been in contact with several legislators in Tallahassee, and the students don't even know this, but Senator Bill Montford of Tallahassee and Senator Education Appropriations Chair Kathleen Pasadomo from Naples are already working on something on the Senate side. They're seeking support from the House side. All three of the partners from our lobbying firm, Capital City, are all former student government presidents or vice presidents, either at the high school or college level. Some of them went to the wrong school, but that's besides the point. So they're from your tribe. So I can't wait to make the connection in the introduction. So yes, sir, we're on it.
I just wanted to say that it was great that you guys made the presentation, and thank you so much. It's your guys' voice that was been needed for a long time inside this process, both at the legislative piece, but back home too. We almost need to start putting in some of the clubs. When I was a sponsor over at O'Galley High School, we had situations where students had some issues, and I found that they were better to talk to each other rather than some of the other ones in support help. So clubs at the school is great, along with the community, but you guys have been the missing piece for a long time. So thank you so much for stepping up and doing what you guys are doing. It's desperately needed. Thank you.
And thanks again. I don't see students there. I see community leadership, and congratulations. Thanks. Do we want to? Yeah. Oh. All right.
People what they want.
Mr. Craig, as the community leaders take their seat, I want you to know these are doers. They've already raised over $7,000 for breast cancer awareness, and another $5,000 the group raised for various individual students at a couple of schools that are wrestling with cancer. We had some fun-spirited competition between the 16 schools to see which school would raise the most for breast cancer awareness. That ended up being Merritt Island High School. And give them a... And so what they were competing for was an opportunity to have the superintendent for a day visit their school and do whatever they tell him to do. So stay tuned for Wyatt. You know, he has this look on his face that I'm not very trusting of right now, but I'm going to do whatever Wyatt tells me to do when I visit Merritt Island High School.
Awesome.
Wyatt, Wyatt, can I make a request that somehow FSU is brought into this? Like the gear, shirts, and
All right,
can you
thank
send
you.
pictures to us, please?
Thank you, Mr. Susan. All right, before we move further, I do have a request from Ms. Debbie Greco from the Local 1010, and she'd like to make some public comments. And however, she needs to leave for an appointment in about 5 minutes, and I would ask if it pleases my fellow board members to allow her some time here to make her comments. Good? All right, thank you. Ms. Greco?
Thank you very much. I appreciate making the exception for me. I have to be back in Orlando at 7, so. I'm here tonight to give you the results of our contract ratification vote that was held last Friday and Saturday. We had a 15.7% turnout, and we had a 57.5% no, 41.7% yes, and less than 1% in voids. So a total of 489 people voted out of a possible 3111. So I was hoping that we would have a better turnout due to all the help that we got from our colleagues concerning the vote. But it is what it is, and we will be heading back to the table and starting all over again. So I look forward to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Greco. And that brings us to the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Blackburn.
Mr. Craig and members of the board, on this evening's agenda, we have administrative staff recommendations, 3 presentations, 21 consent items, 7 action items, and 4 information items. You also have the yellow supplemental agenda, which are changes made to the agenda since being released to the public. There were revisions to item A7 on administrative staff recommendations. Revisions were also made to item D9 on school year calendar standards and proposals for the 2018-2019 and 2019-2020 school years. Item F12 on meeting minutes, item F28 on satellite high school track surfacing, and G39 on attendance boundary changes for the 2018-2019 school year. Item F22 on suspension of instructional employee is an addition which has subsequently been pulled.
What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Susan, seconded by Ms. Belford. Is there any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes 5-0. Dr. Blackburn, will you please let us know about the administrative staff recommendations?
Yes, sir. Absolutely, Mr. Craig. There are 5 administrative staff members for the board to consider.
And what are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Belford, seconded by Ms. Deskovich. Are there any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes 5-0. Dr. Blackburn.
Mr. Craig and members of the board, at this time I would like to take this opportunity to welcome and recognize Mr. Joseph Flora on his reclassification and transfer from the position of assistant principal at Melbourne High School to the position of principal at Madison Middle School.
Thank you, board members, and thank you, Dr. Blackburn. It's a great honor to be the next principal at Madison Middle School. I'd also like to thank Dr. Sullivan, Mrs. Bowman, and Mr. Novelli for their support. I'd like to thank Chad Kirk, Mark Elliott, Ken Wynn, Lena Weibelt, and Chris Moore for being great mentors to me. I'd also like to thank Ms. Tomlinson and my new administrative team for being here tonight to show me support. Thank you guys, I appreciate it. And I'd like to thank my family. Without their love and encouragement each and every day, I wouldn't be who I am. And I'm joined tonight by my wife, Christy, my children, Gabby and Joey, and my parents. So thank you all again, and I look forward to serving the Madison school community.
Next up, congratulations are in order to Ms. Heather Price on her reclassification from the position of assistant principal at Brevard Virtual School to the position of principal at Brevard Virtual School. Ms. Price.
Thank you, members of the board, Dr. Blackburn. It has been my honor to lead Brevard Virtual for almost 10 years now, and I'm so proud to now be the first principal. I have an amazing staff.
They're actually here. I thought you meant
Yes.
virtual.
They're not in pajamas or slippers or anything, and they're real life human beings. I do want to thank Dr. Sullivan, Ms. Bowman, Ms. Rodriguez, Dr. Theddy. So many folks in the back of the room helped me to launch Brevard Virtual in 2008 and have supported me the entire way. So I do appreciate all that they have done. And my husband, who has put up with a lot. He is very patient. When you can run your entire school from your phone, it's really hard to unplug. And so he has supported me from my time as a classroom teacher at O'Galley all the way to now being a principal. So thank you very much. I look forward to this next journey that I'll be on. Thank you.
It's the loudest virtual people I've ever heard. Next, congratulations to Ms. Shannon Daly on her reclassification from the position of assistant principal at Manatee Elementary to the position of principal at Manatee Elementary. Ms. Daly.
Thank you, Dr. Blackburn and members of the school board. I am excited and thrilled to be the next principal at Manatee Elementary and propel Manatee to even greater heights. But I don't stand here alone. I have had the support of so many. Mrs. Klein, Dr. Sullivan, Dr. Mella, I thank you for your guidance and molding me as a leader. To the staff of Manatee Elementary, I am humbled by the support you have given me as I've evolved as a leader, and you make me proud to be a Manatee. To Assistant Principal Christina Carver, there is nobody better to stand next to me as we lead Manatee to be a place of success for all students. I've got a whole row of family here tonight, including my husband, Brian Daly, and our children, Lindsay and Casey, and they really are a key ingredient in my success as a leader. And to Carl Brown, who saw a leader in me before I saw it myself, who knew when to support and when to push. Thank you for the opportunities that you gave me that landed me my dream job. And to Dr. Blackburn, I will leave you with this promise. I will go to Manatee as the principal every day and be the kind of leader that I would want to work for.
Thank you. Now let us recognize Jennifer Brockwell's transfer from the position of principal at Oak Park Elementary School, sorry, Mrs. Belford, to the position of principal of our new choice school in Northern Brevard, South Lake Elementary School. Ms. Brockwell.
Dr. Blackburn and members of the board and Jane Klein, I want to thank you for the opportunity to reopen South Lake as a choice school in North Brevard. It's very exciting times for North Brevard, and so I thank you so much for this. And Mrs. Belford, I don't even know the words to say how appreciative I am of you for your support in my role at Oak Park. You have been not only a tremendous support as a board member, but also as a parent, an amazing parent. And so I look forward to the years to come where we continue working together. I thank you so very much. I also want to thank the Oak Park community and family members for their support with me tonight. I have my two assistant principals, Mrs. Kimberly Harris and Mrs. Jennifer Clark. We are an amazing, strong team of administrators there at Oak Park, and I learned so much from them, and they're in the Preparing New Principal program, so I want to put that little plug out there. They definitely, I look forward to seeing their accomplishments through the program, and they'll be standing here before we know it. You two are very amazing, and so thank you. Also with me tonight, I have my husband, Kenneth Brockwell, my son, Jeremy Brockwell, and his girlfriend, Kirsten Eberhardt. Both Jeremy and Kirsten are in college, but they are both products of Brevard Public Schools, so I'm extremely proud of them. They definitely make me very proud. Before I get finished with the family, I apologize. I do want to thank a few members, DJ Cronell, Tara Taylor, Cynthia Adams, and Dr. Mella. Dr. Mella hired me for my first teaching job and gave me many, many leadership experiences. Thank you, Dr. Mella. But you did, just like you were saying, she saw in me a leader, and she said, you're going to be a leader one day. And I'm like, really? And she's like, yes. And so I thank you, Dr. Mella. But back to my family, when I was first appointed principal of Oak Park, my son received his first part-time job at Brevard Robotics as a machinist at 16. And that week, when I was going to be appointed, he said, Mom, how do I take a day off of work? And I said, you're not going to take a day off of work because, I'm just going to stand up and say my name and say a few thank yous. We can watch it on the TV later. No, do not take a day off, this work ethic thing in the family here. And he had a little part-time job to get a little gas money and just kind of teach him responsibility. And so I said, no, you're not. And my husband, he works, Kenneth Brockwell, he works close to I-4, and I told him the same thing. I said, you're not going to leave early. My mom will be there, my brother, it's not a big deal. I'm going to stand up and say my name. And when the opportunity came for South Lake, he's like, if you are selected for principal of South Lake, we will be there because this is a big deal. It's a very big deal. And so I thank you both very much. Very supportive. For those that are newly appointed, you have to find that balance. You have to, because your family, treat them well, because there's going to be times where they have to put up with a lot of stuff. And so if you find that balance and you still treat them well, they're going to take good care of you. It's like we're in this together. They're already like talking about South Lake. And I said, simmer down. It's my school. Let me pick the colors. But no, I'm kidding. No, but I do. Jeremy and Kenneth, I thank you both very much for your tremendous amount of support. You've been through a lot with my teaching degree and teaching in the classroom and administrative roles, and you've been there every step of the way. So again, I look forward to reopening South Lake and the great things coming to North Brevard. Thank you.
Just FYI, board and audience, prior to Mrs. Brockwell being named principal, we had about a little over 30 applications for South Lake Elementary School. Since the announcement of her being recommended as principal, that number is up to 121, 123 in just a few days. She may have something to do with that. I don't know.
And Dr. Blackburn, if I may say, there has not even been an official announcement to parents yet that Ms. Brockwell is going to South Lake. So that is just what has come through the announcement to the teachers and the rumor mill. So that official word goes out to parents tomorrow. So hopefully our system can take the rush that I anticipate.
No pressure, Ms. Brockwell, no pressure. Thank you. Last but certainly not least, congratulations go out to Brandy Griswell on her reclassification and transfer from the position of literacy coach at Southwest Middle School to the position of 10-month assistant principal at Palm Bay Magnet High School.
Thank you so much, Dr. Blackburn and the board. It is my honor and privilege to have served the children of Brevard for the last 9 years. My first shout out goes to Chris Moore, who again saw the leader in me before I saw it in myself. Thank you to my family who has stood by my side, and I work to make them proud. Thank you to amazing professionals that I've worked with at lots of schools. Most of all, thank you to the children that I've been able to work with and watch succeed. Todd Shearer, thank you so much for so many opportunities to grow myself so that I could help other kids. And Judd, I'm ready to go. Let's go Pirates.
Well, thank you, Dr. Blackburn. Congratulations to each of you. With no recognitions or resolutions, Dr. Blackburn, I think it's time for presentations.
Yes, sir. Mr. Craig, we have 3 presentations this evening. The first is an audit update, which will be presented by our Chief Financial Officer, Mrs. Penny Zerker.
Good evening. In an effort to continue increasing transparency, this is our first audit update to be presented to the board. And beginning with this one, we will do quarterly updates to the board at the end of each quarter to review with you any external audits, any internal audits, as well as any quality control reviews that have occurred within the quarter. Tonight, we will review audits completed that include the 2016-17 external financial audit, the 2016-17 internal audit of internal accounts at schools, the half-cent sales tax. All three of these audits have already been presented to the Audit Committee on November 17th. As a sneak peek of the outcomes, you will find at each of your stations an I love a good audit button, similar to the one that I'm wearing and is shown on the screen. So a little sneak peek of what's to come.
Look, he's got a big one.
Let's begin with our annual external financial audit. The purpose of this audit is to express an opinion on the district's financial statements. Those are the statements in the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, or CAFR, that you will be approving a little later in the agenda. The purpose of expressing an opinion is to determine whether they fairly represent the financial position of the district. And this is required by Florida statutes 11.45, Section 1C, 218.39, and 101030. In addition to expressing an opinion, they review the internal controls over the financial reporting, and this is done to determine what auditing procedures they will need to prepare. In the years that we are not audited by the Florida Auditor General, they also prepare the review of compliance on our major federal programs, ensuring that we are in compliance with statute, federal law, and regulations. This year's audit was conducted by Moore Stephens Lovelace, certified public accountants out of Orlando, Florida. They were selected through an RFP process conducted by the Brevard Public Schools Audit Committee, and their audit reports are published within the CAFR. The outcomes. Report on financial statements. We received what's called an unqualified opinion. It is the best opinion that you can get and simply states that the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the district. Our report of internal controls on financial reporting. Moore Stephens Lovelace did not identify any deficiencies within our internal controls that they would consider to be a material weakness. Our report on compliance of major federal programs. Again, Moore Stephens Lovelace found that the district complied in all material respects with the types of compliance that could have a direct or material effect on the major federal programs. In the finance world, we call this a clean audit and attribute it to winning the national championship of college football. Some of my team are here tonight, and if you would allow me the opportunity to recognize them, if you will stand, and allow me to thank them for their hard efforts. These ladies spend many, many, many hours during the summer when everyone else is vacationing here in the office, 5 days a week, working more than 10 hours a day, and they're the ones who do all the work to make this happen, both in the accounting processes, closing the books, and preparing for the audit. So thank you very much for your work. Next, we'll look at the 2016-17 annual audit of schools' internal accounts. The purpose of this audit is different than the first. It is a compliance audit. It tests detailed testing in 15 areas that included cash receipts, expenditures, bank reconciliations, and general ledger review. It's important to understand what a compliance audit is when looking at this. The auditor comes in and does a random sample of transactions, and if any error is found, it is considered a finding. It's luck of the sample sometimes. A school may have only three errors in the whole year, and if the sample pulls them, they have 3 findings. A school could have multiple mistakes in a year, and if the sample doesn't pull them, there are no findings. Sometimes this can be very frustrating for some of our principals because that one mistake gets found and they lose their perfect audit. And it's frustrating, but if you understand what it is, it's looking for ways to improve. This audit was conducted by RSM. Now let's look at some of the outcomes, and we're going to look at them compared to the prior year. This year, 42 out of 82 of our schools, that's 51%, had no comments. This is down from 52 last year, and there are 10 principals that are going that one mistake was found. 71 out of 82 schools with 2 comments or less. This is the same as last year. In the audit world and compliance for schools' internal accounts, this 86% all received very good audits because you do expect some form of mistakes to occur in the year, and this is a really good audit for them, so we commend them. In general, our total comments for the year did go up to 109 from 65, and we have an increase in targeted schools for this year of 8. We're actually attributing this in retrospect to the principal turnover. We did have 17 principals turnover this year versus 10 last year. And in addition, our bookkeeper turnover was much higher at 29 versus 16. We had 5 more resignations, we had 4 more retirements, and we had 4 more transfers or promotions. This is really not unusual in a year when you have lots of principal turnover. Bookkeepers become very attached to their principals, and they want to either stay with them or no longer want to stay. With these number of new bookkeepers, we're already doing focused training for each of those and have already had new bookkeeper training and will be having more. Annual cash flows through our schools this year slightly down from last year at $14,764,777. So the important things to look here that we're focused on is the reduction in our number of schools with no comments, the total number of audits, and again, the increased turnover in bookkeeper and our focused training. In looking at focused training, we do have 8 schools that are on our targets based on the findings that they had. We have already begun our focused training with each of these. Most of these schools do have a new bookkeeper on hand, and we've already begun working with them. Targeted training with each of these schools began shortly after we received the initial preliminary report, and we're anticipating when we do our interim review with them this spring that we'll see quite a bit better performance in these areas. On a positive, 51% were no comments. Roy Allen Elementary, Atlantis Elementary, Audubon Elementary, Cambridge Elementary, Columbia Elementary, Dr. W.J. Creel Elementary, Croton, Discovery, Endeavor, Fairglen, Freedom 7, Gulfview, Lockmar, Longleaf, Manatee, Krista McAuliffe, Meadow Lane Intermediate, Meadow Lane Primary, Mila Elementary, Mims Elementary, Oak Park, Pinewood, Port Malabar Elementary, Quest Elementary, Theodore Roosevelt Elementary, Sable Elementary, Sherwood Elementary, Sunrise Elementary, Suntree, Surfside, Tropical, West Melbourne Elementary, West Side Elementary, Ralph Williams Elementary, Astronaut High School, Bayside High School, Cocoa Beach Junior Senior High, Heritage High, Thomas Jefferson Middle, Lyndon B. Johnson Middle, Ronald McNair Middle, Palm Bay Magnet High. Congratulations to each of them for achieving this honor. Also in our internal audit of school accounts, we had a district observation made by RSM in regards to centralization of processes and sponsor training. Their comments were supporting our current initiative towards centralized internal accounts. Their comments said this will reduce the burden on schools, increase internal controls, and assist to mitigate and detect fraud. By removing some of the functions away, such as bank reconciliations and check writing, we'll be able to allow bookkeepers and principals to focus on the more important issues as to what's going on individually in their accounts and being available for teacher sponsors and assistants in that area. In addition, they've suggested that we prepare a district-wide standard training that our principals can use with teacher sponsors, a very consistent finding across all school districts across the state. Our monies collected forms filled out improperly by our sponsors and teachers. They've got a lot going on in their classrooms, and we need to do everything we can help them to be able to complete those properly. Staff is already working on a simplified training that we can put into effect in the spring, and our long-term goal would be an online web-based training where they can do that at their classrooms. The last to talk about is our half-cent sales surtax. The primary purpose of this is also a compliance audit, and it's to test reporting to the Independent Citizens Oversight Committee, the ICOC. I believe they'll be doing a presentation here shortly on the past year. It tests the appropriateness of the transaction, the existence of documentation, and the accuracy and valuation of the expenditures. The audit period for this audit was December 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2017. There were quite a large number of procedures that were tested. And those procedures include revenues, expenditures, and procurement. We're proud to say no exceptions were found in the detailed testing. No red X's, all green checks. Doing a great job in keeping that going, and we're really proud of the work that's being done in both accounting and facilities construction. For the public, if there's any additional information or a copy of the audit report that they would like to obtain, they may contact my office at the information on the screen. And lastly, to all the district staff, not just financial services, but including purchasing, facilities, and all of our schools who work on the financial transactions, great job, everybody. We're really proud of you.
Thank you, Ms. Zerker. Do any of my fellow board members have any comments or questions? Mr. Susan.
I was taking a look at the turnover on slide 13 that you mentioned about the bookkeepers. Can you tell me, I understand that we have 29 and it goes by principal and stuff like that, but what is the wage of one of our bookkeepers on average?
They are one of the second lowest 12-month positions out there. Their pay range is just above accounting specialist 1 within my financial services division.
Can you, roughly, is that $12 an hour, I
I
think?
do not know. I don't have that information available right now, so no, I can't.
Be based on the labor category that we're using with the county labor category, is that what you said? County specialist, you said? Accounting specialist,
I'm breaking the
sorry.
mic. Yeah, our accounting specialist. would
Utilizing the labor category that the DOE puts out?
Yes.
Okay.
What I'm hearing is that it's roughly around $12 an hour for the bookkeepers. Does that sound about correct?
I couldn't comment. I don't have that information. I've not looked at that.
it's just a cause for concern that the people that are in charge of the money at our school districts are making roughly between $12 and $13 an hour. And it was one of the things, do we have anything going on to where we're looking at possibly moving that in any direction and what it takes, or do we have any other way of identifying our bookkeepers and keeping them with less turnover? Because I know that's been an issue even before the turnover of the principals. That's an issue going back about 6 or 7 years per the previous audits. Is there any plan in place to take care of that as an issue that we have?
Well, we have several things that we're doing, but I believe on the finance side for dollars, the compensation study will be looking at that. With the centralized internal accounts, we'll be reducing some of the riskier and more difficult workload by taking on the deposit reconciliation, bank reconciliation, and checks, and giving them more time to focus. It is a demanding job.
Do we know when that survey's coming out? Because we keep saying survey, survey, survey. Do we have an
Not a survey,
estimated?
it's a study.
A study? Do we know when that,
It is
any
a study,
estimate?
Mr. Susan.
Okay.
Dr. Kent is there, and I'm sure she can answer that on a sidebar if you needed that.
End of January.
January, thank you. The other thing I was going to ask is something came across the table that deals with the internal accounts and the process that we have here, and somebody was trying to order an obsolete part on eBay and it ran across that we don't have that ability. Is that true, or is that something that we need to take a look at?
Currently in internal accounts, no, we do not have that ability. With the implementation of centralized, we will be giving them P cards, purchasing cards, so they will be able to take advantage of online purchases and discounts
Through the P cards.
through the P cards.
Thank you so much.
You're
And
welcome.
one of the other things that I was noticing is that in the internal accounts, we also have the armored car and the deposit structure that's inside there. And I was going to ask you two questions. One, when we may see the RFP for the armored car, and the other piece is do you feel with the deposit structure that the armored car is bringing, it will be as effective as the amount of deposits that we currently have? Are we having less deposits with the armored car than we currently have per school?
We are in the process of the rebid without the supplies, so I hope to be bringing that within the next month or so for
Okay.
board approval. I do not believe we will see less deposits. We will probably see deposits more often than we have seen because it will be more available to them. The biggest portion and importance of using the cash courier system is freeing up time of the bookkeepers to be able to focus on the other work that is really where they need to be focused.
Yeah, I just noticed that one of the big risks is when the cash is sitting at the place for as long as it is. Is there any way to get a number of deposits per school in the previous past? Can we pull those numbers?
We could certainly get that. for
Thank you. That's it. That's all I had. Thank you.
Are there any other questions, comments? Thank you, Ms. Zerker. Dr. Blackburn.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zerker. Next, we're going to hear some information about the 2018, 2019, and 2019, 2020 district calendars. We're going to hear more information. Following the presentation, I will be asking for direction from the board regarding which option you would like to have recommended for a vote at the next meeting. Christine Moore, Director of Professional Learning and Development, will facilitate the presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Just so that you know, before we started this presentation, we've had several meetings. We've met with several different departments. We've met with Cabinet. We've met one-on-one. So we have some recommendations and some suggestions that have been given along the way, and we'll talk about those at the end. So we really started the process with a calendar priority survey. We worked with Matt Reed and District Communications to develop a survey. It went out to our community in several different ways, and we did get over 11,000 responses. And as you can see, the vast majority of those responses came from our parents. We asked the community to rank their priorities and give us an idea of what they really wanted to see us focus on as we started to develop the calendars. Overwhelmingly, the parents came back and said the first day of school and the last day of school were their top priorities. Unfortunately, often they were just in conflict with one another, and that's kind of a running theme as we go through some of the written responses and concerns that came out, is as one group wants one thing very strongly in a calendar, another group wants exactly the opposite. So you'll see that theme come out as we move forward. We looked at the written comments. We had over 2,000 written comments. We read every single one of them and categorized them into 9 broad categories. Calendar production was just this process, the start and end dates. Early dismissal, which was the #1 comment that came through, is the early dismissal. Holidays, teacher work days, how we handled the hurricane, how we deal with testing, and then there was another big broad category of just non-calendar related comments that were received. So I want to go through each and just kind of give you the trends so that you can see what the community is thinking and feeling. They felt very strongly that they wanted some kind of an alignment with our neighboring districts and our local colleges. They absolutely wanted to see those calendars produced earlier, and if possible, to have 2 years worth of that calendar come out. One of the comments that made sense to me, a lot of people said our calendar is too difficult to read. We put out one calendar for the school system and then give it to parents. They want something without all of our extra stuff in it. So we're absolutely, whatever we agree upon, we're absolutely going to make sure that happens this year. And they talked about an interest in exploring year-round school as a calendar production comment. And again, mostly they wanted consistency from year to year. So as we move forward, one of the things that was a big ask was that each committee that developed, each group that developed a calendar, really look at a 2-year process. Start and end dates, many of them really liked that midweek start. Many of them really don't like that midweek start. They believe starting in August is too early, but they really want to start and end before Memorial Day. But one of the things that was clear across everything is they do want first semester to end prior to winter break. Early dismissal, like I said, this was the highest response rate. 175 comments were in support of an early dismissal Friday. We had 25 comments in support of an early dismissal Wednesday. And quite a few that don't like the concept of early dismissal at all. And those comments really kind of were tacked on to childcare issues, the lack of childcare in some schools, over across holidays as well. That came out often. And several of the comments asked us to explore the idea of trading in early release days for full teacher work days off. And I know I spoke individually with several of you about what that looks like or might mean for us. Holiday trends, the #1 comment that was received across all of the holiday trends is they want the full week of Thanksgiving off. They also felt very, very strongly, especially in our second semester, that there were too many weeks without any break at all in second semester, and it caused issues. There were specific religious holidays that they asked for our consideration with, and they ran the gamut, Christian, Jewish, Hindu, Muslim, and quite a few comments about wanting to align our calendar with the government holidays for, again, childcare issues. I imagine these comments came from mostly teachers. They really wanted the work days aligned with the work. When it was time to get the grading out, they wanted a work day around that. And depending on who answered the question, some said it was too many, some said it was not enough. The hurricane trend I thought was really interesting. A lot of our community said that they really wanted mandatory makeup days because they saw it as a loss of instructional time. Just as many said they supported the way we handled it. They thought we handled it appropriately within the school system. Testing, most of this revolved around testing windows, which we really don't have a whole lot of control over, but they did say they wanted those exams done before winter break, and again, they want winter break to be the end of first semester. And they had some concern over just kind of general, a lot of comments were just testing, so it was hard to see. They're not happy with testing. But they also would like us not to come back from a break and immediately start testing. They would like some time in between there to get going. So just so that you know, the calendar committee, we had a pretty good array of people represented. We had people from Leading and Learning and Professional Learning and Development and HR. We had student services represented, represented, principals, assistant principals, teachers. Our BFT president was there, and a 1010 representative. And I promised all of them I would not give their names out, and it was up to them at the end of the calendar production whether they wanted to admit to being part of the process or not. So just so that you know, we looked at a lot of documents. Those are all included as part of this agenda item. We looked at contract language. Contract language is really specific. Students have to have 180 days, teachers have 196, and 6 of those are paid holidays. And those paid holidays are specifically listed in contract to be Labor Day, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving, and the day after Thanksgiving, New Year's Day, and Martin Luther King Day. So those are all by name written in our contract. Now, as we were working on the calendar, there was negotiations going on, and so we have some tentative agreements also that we have committed to. And what you're going to see is some of the calendars aren't in line with those tentative agreements, but we've made recommendations to bring those in line. The first is there was a tentative agreement to move our early release program from Wednesday early release to Friday early release. And the second one, and this is the one that is more challenging but doable, is a tentative agreement adding 2 additional teacher work days to the calendar. And they were specifically asked, written to be added in October during that grading cycle and March during that grading cycle. We also looked at Florida state statute. The first one is that we can start no earlier, students can start no earlier than August 10th, so we made sure to comply with that. And the second one is talking about a window of assessment. With the exception of just very few tests, one of them being the FSA ELA for 3rd grade, almost all of our testing is completed between May 1st and May 28th. And we have up to 4 weeks to get that done. We can test no earlier on the majority of our assessments before then. Kind of put a stick in this one because while we have discretion of how short a window or long a window, as long as it starts on May 1st and ends on May 28th and is 4 weeks, there is no way to physically test some of these tests with an extremely short window. I'll give you for example. We have a medium-sized high school, 1,700, with almost a 1-to-1 computer ratio. It will take them 14 full days, so almost 3 weeks of full days to get the testing done, and that is with absolutely no makeup days built in. Also during that time, we give advanced placement, ACE, IB tests, and I've had several conversations with Nada Francis with Leading and Learning. They brought out that there are also schools that are 12 schools that are going to have difficulty with this. So we just have to kind of stick a pin in this and know that testing is going to be an issue to complete in this window. We looked at the statewide assessment program. Again, a lot of our tests are May 1st through the 14th. Many others are May 1st through the 28th. But the vast majority of them need to be completed from May 1st to the May 28th. We looked at the reporting deadlines to make sure we had full days. Strangely enough, we pulled the Eastern Florida State calendar for this year. We really wanted to look at next year's calendar, and when we finally got in touch with them, they told us they were waiting for us to publish our calendar. So, you know, we're going to do our best. Just so that we could look at some neighboring school districts, we did look at 2 years, and you'll see Volusia County has their 18, 19, 19, 20 calendars already done and out. And we also looked at Orange County, the same thing, just to kind of see where we fell in line, as well as our past practice. So we had a lot of documents and a lot of things going into this that we were trying to make sure we dotted our I's and crossed our T's. And last but not least, we had all of the written comments. So I had 3 different groups working on calendars independently of one another, although in the same room, and all of them kind of took a different focus and looked at things through a different lens, trying to really meet the needs of both all of these documents and mandatory responsibilities, as well as what our community said. And I hope that we get close to meeting some of those needs. So for calendar 1, and you guys have 2 years worth of the calendar on the website, I'm only going to go through 18-19. The 19-20 version mirrors it in intent, so they should be mirrored in intent. The highlights, and these are also concerns, are that in calendar 1, the teachers start 4 days later than in the 17-18 school year. What that means to them and to us as an organization is that teachers would actually not get a paycheck on August 15th like they're traditionally used to. They will get one on August 30th. So they would be missing one paycheck because of just pushing it back for 4 days. And we need to know that moving forward with this calendar. Students do start on a Tuesday, and the end of the first semester, again, keeping in mind that the community wanted it to end prior to winter break, this one pushes it back to January 11th. And what you'll notice, and it was well thought out by this group, they brought them back on a Monday, gave them 2 days for exam prep, and then 3 days of exam on that Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, but it does push that calendar back to January 11th. The end of the semester in this one is on May 31st, and that 3rd grade ELA does happen prior to spring break on this calendar. It gives 15 full days of testing, as well as 4 early release days for makeup and 3 early release days for exams. And again, since this semester is ending 5/31, it takes us through that May 28th. This is the maximum amount of time we would be able to allot for testing anyway. However, there is no post-planning day in this calendar. And that would absolutely have to be built in. The student holidays, and if it says PD afterward, that means it's a teacher paid day as well. Labor Day is a paid day off. Veterans Day, which for next year actually falls on a Sunday, that would be the Monday paid day off. Thanksgiving week, it is the entire week off, and 2 of those days are paid. Winter break goes through January 4th, and the 1st is paid. Martin Luther King Day is a paid day, President's Day, and spring break is back in April again. That spring break does include Good Friday. And Memorial Day is a paid day off. The extra work days for the teachers, those days include, those 10 extra days include pre-planning, a 5-day pre-planning, and you'll notice the work day is in October and in March, as well as one in January as they come back from semester, but not a post-planning day. So the immediate recommendations that we would have for this to meet the current contract language of a post-planning day would be to eliminate the February PD day, to create an unpaid holiday allowing for an additional teacher post-planning day on June 3rd, so that was built in. Calendar option 2. The highlights are teachers start around the same time, so it'll have no impact on their pay. Interestingly, pre-planning is 6 days. This front loads instruction into first semester. There aren't as many breaks in first semester because there's no in-service day in September or October. They take care of that in the 6 days of pre-planning. Not well liked, students would start on a Friday, but the end of first semester is December 21st. The end of second semester takes us all the way through May 31st, and that 3rd grade ELA happens after spring break, but there is a built-in week in between spring break and that testing cycle. It does provide 15 full days of testing, 4 days of early release, and 3 days of early release exams. Student holidays, Labor Day is a paid day. It is the entire week of Thanksgiving. They moved one of the paid holiday of Veterans Day. This committee moved that paid day into the Thanksgiving week. So there is not a Veterans paid day holiday there. Veterans Day is on a Sunday. They moved it so that the Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday are all paid days. Winter break goes clearly through January 11th. And that was in order to push back that end date to May 31st. Martin Luther King Day is a paid day off. and spring break is in March. We did do a survey of our neighboring schools, neighboring districts, I apologize. The vast majority of them have the exact same, the ones that have published their calendars have the exact same spring break date. Good Friday is a day off, and it's asterisked because there is a teacher workday the following Monday, which makes it a 4-day weekend there. And Memorial Day is a day off. However, the 10 extra teacher workdays do not conform with the TA. You notice the 6 days of pre-planning. There is not a PD or a workday in first semester. The first workday is in January, a PD in February, a workday in April, which isn't aligned to the work, and a post-planning. So we have some recommendations there as well. The first one, in order to meet current contract language, is honor Veterans Day as a paid holiday by eliminating 1 day out of the Thanksgiving break, which makes it a 4-day week. Create an October 15th teacher workday by eliminating another day out of Thanksgiving break, which honors the tentative agreement contract language, which makes it the 3-day Thanksgiving holiday. And the last one is move the April teacher workday to March 15th, which eliminates that 4-day weekend. And again, those are all to honor the current contract language or the tentative agreement contract language that has been agreed upon. Calendar 3. Teachers start the exact same day, so no impact on pay. Students do, again, start on Friday. The end of first semester is on the 21st, and the end of second semester is unfortunately on May 23rd, which will have an impact you'll see on testing in just a second. Third grade ELA will happen after spring break, but it only provides 11 days of full days of testing, and that will not be a possibility for most of our secondary schools. It does allot 3 early release days for makeup and 3 early release days for exams. Student holidays are Labor Day, Veterans Day, both paid. Thanksgiving, it's 3 days off with the 2 days being paid as in contract language currently. Winter break goes through the 3rd of January. Martin Luther King Day is a paid holiday. Spring break is, like I said, exactly where most of the other districts are reporting at this point as well. Good Friday is off. And with this calendar right now, it ends prior to Memorial Day. The extra teacher days are PD Day in September, a work day in January, PD Day in February. The work day in March does align with the tentative agreements, and then there's a post-planning day, but here would be the recommendations for that. We would have to move second semester start date back to establish a May 31st school end date, which would allow for the appropriate testing calendar. We would have to create a teacher workday on October 15th by eliminating 1 day of Thanksgiving break to meet the tentative agreement. That would make our Thanksgiving break Thanksgiving and the Friday after, so it would be a 2-day break. And to ensure a post-planning teacher workday is a non-student day. If you look at this calendar, you'll see that they added a makeup testing day the same day as the teacher post-planning day, and that has to be a non-student day. So in meeting one-on-one with several of the board members, there were some concerns that came up and some things that I just need to kind of get my running orders of what I need to focus on. There were concerns about students starting on Friday. I understand. If I was a parent, I would feel much the same way. Concerns about having Veterans Day in school or out of school. Just opinions on that. Most everybody spoke about really wanting to keep a March spring break. And there was some conversation about making sure that the teacher plan day on the Friday after holidays was moved to Monday, so that they just started the week off on a Monday. There were people that were very pro whole week at Thanksgiving and some that were not, so that's a conversation. Concerns about creating a 2-year plan prior to legislative sessions and DOE calendar production because, you know, they could change and then we would have to make amendments, which is a concern. Nobody likes to make changes mid-plan. And I remember writing calendars on this and having a purpose for writing calendars on this, but I don't recall it right now. So I'll come back to it if I think of it. So what I really would like to do is just get some questions or have discussion or recommendations, because I'd like to bring back one calendar to you guys in January for approval and try to take the best of whatever it is that you would like to see happen from what we've offered and make that happen.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the presentation, and I know we've all seen it individually. Just before we start making comments, I just want to make sure we're all in the same playing field and all thinking the same way. You gave us a slide of kind of a consolidation of all the comments of the board members as you met with them individually. What is your plan from that? Because I mean, were you able to incorporate those in any of the calendars? Did you look at incorporating any of those comments? Were there any, otherwise we're just going to start rehashing the exact same comments, and we're not going to get anywhere unless we have an idea of where your mindset is and what you need to walk back with in order to get the product, I guess.
Well, there was very specific conflicting opinions on a couple of issues, Veterans Day and Thanksgiving, that I just would like to get some clarification on the will of the board, basically. The March spring break is already done. Moving the students out of a Friday start is going to mean pushing back that calendar almost to Christmas Eve, quite frankly. So I can absolutely try to get that done. But I just don't know that it's going to be possible. But I'm going to try, because I know that's important. It's important to our community. It's important to the board. They've all mentioned it. But as far as what I need kind of some conversation about whether we're going to move forward with honoring that whole week off at Thanksgiving, or the 3-day, or maybe even the truncated 2-day Thanksgiving break. You know, what your feelings are, or around the Veterans Day, because those were the 2 items that were in most conflict with the board when we had our one-on-ones.
Okay. My fear is that we could sit here for literally 2 days trying to do that. So what I'll ask the board members to do is give a quick 2-minute what your priorities are, so that we can then probably you will not walk out of here with an exact direction tonight, but we do have a workshop scheduled on Friday where we can consolidate some of those ideas and give you back some actual, probably better idea. Otherwise, again, we could sit here for quite a long time, I think, and that would not benefit either the process or you or the public. So if we can just go through the board members, get us what your really big priorities are and what your thoughts are, maybe in a quick consolidated manner, I think that'll help us quite a bit. Does anybody want to start?
If I can just make
Sure.
a request for us to be able to see the board member comments on our screen, because I don't have that in my slide packet.
I'm not sure how to do that.
I'm actually talking beyond you to the folks in the back, if they could pop that up for us so we could see it.
On our screens. Yeah, that's a good point, Misty. Thank you.
Assuming they're listening.
Knock, knock in the back. Anyone home?
Sue, can you knock on the door there? We just...
There you go.
Perfect.
There you go. Wonderful. Perfect. Well, then, Ms. Belford, would you start?
I would be happy to start. I don't necessarily have an issue with students starting on Friday. I actually kind of like the Thursday, Friday, let them get back into the groove and then give them the weekend, because mine are still somewhat young, and that's a big transition for them. So I kind of like the Thursday, Friday. don't love just Friday because I don't feel like that gives enough transition time. But if we could do like Thursday, Friday, I think that would be good. I don't necessarily need them to start on a Monday. And I think as long as we can explain to the community why we're not starting on a Monday, because they're getting all these other great things in the calendar, I think that is certainly doable. I like the March spring break. I don't like the April spring break. I would hate to see us go down to a 2-day Thanksgiving because I feel like our employees who are traveling need that Wednesday to travel. And so I'm really not a fan of that being a work day. Share the concern with the 2-year plan. I guess my question or my consideration is, we talk about some of the contractual requirements like the teacher workday in October. I would, for example, on calendar 3, I like the recommendation to extend the holiday, and I wonder if there wouldn't be a little bit more wiggle room there to address our Thanksgiving and our PD days within those shifts as well. Certainly, I'm not a fan of calendar 1 that would make our teachers miss a payday. I think that that would be a horrible thing to do to them.
Just one quick thing, the calendar has to be taken in semesters, because you have to have 90 days in first and 90 days in second. So anything we do to second semester really doesn't have an impact on what we're doing in first.
Right.
That Friday start date, that's August 10th. That's why it's the
Okay.
Friday start date, so we can't move it to Thursday.
Can't do the Thursday.
Yeah.
Got it. So I'm not opposed to the Friday if it allows us to get the rest of the stuff done, I guess would be my.
Okay.
Thank you, Misty. Andy, you want to chime in, please?
Sure. Start on Friday. I don't have any opinion about that. I think the first day of school is pretty much a fun day anyhow, so maybe get it out of the system and then come back swinging on Monday. But I agree with Misty on March break. I agree with Misty on at least 3+ days for Thanksgiving. I'm leaning towards, I like calendar 2 because it gives us plenty of testing time. And spring break is in the right place, as I just said. One option, though, if we need to move Friday without impacting the end of the first semester, I am definitely a proponent of Veterans Day being a school day. We are a veteran, military-rich and proud community. I know very well from having a child that on that day off, of Veterans Day, they sleep in late, they get up, they don't necessarily know why they have the day off, they're just glad that they have the day off. I don't think that does any justice to our military heroes, especially in this community. We had a Veterans Day, school day 3 years ago, I think it was, because we had to do a makeup from a storm. And I believe we had veterans programs in the school, and it went over really well. I know we had some veterans programs, all-day programs this year in lieu of a school day, yet Veterans Day was on a weekend. When I spoke to veterans after the last time we had Veterans Day as a school day and suggested it, some of the veterans were like, no, and I was like, well, why? They said, well, we want the kids out watching the parade. Well, one, not many of them have access to that. Number two, if Veterans Day is on the weekend, the parade's on the weekend, so that is not relevant. And what better way to teach the history and respect our military heroes than to have a full day all across Brevard County for Veterans Day and have veterans in all our schools. I know we have enough veterans in Brevard County to have a massive impact on our students all in one day. And if we wanted to move that Friday to Monday and we had school on Veterans Day, that would not push the last day of the semester out, if I'm correct.
In calendar 3, calendar 2,
In 2.
it would, because they did not give a Veterans Day on that Monday. They just moved the paid holiday into Thanksgiving.
So on calendar 2, first year, we have school on Veterans Day, is what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, we have school the day after Veterans Day, which
Second
is a
year.
Monday.
Monday.
Yeah.
Right. So there's not a day off during the week for that
Correct.
holiday.
Correct. It would be, the paid holiday would be observed as a third day in the Thanksgiving week.
I like that. I like calendar 2. The question is whether the board would support Veterans Day during a week where we honor our veterans, irregardless of where the holiday fell, or only in the event that the holiday fell on a weekend. As a minimum, I think that works very well. But that's my opinion. I think that's missing from our society, and we need to step up our efforts of educating our children on how important that is. And I can't think of a better way in a better county to do that. But I like calendar too. I don't have any issues with it at all. And I do have issue though with us putting a gold star on the second year without a real strong caveat of subject to change, because we don't know what's going to happen in legislation from year to year.
Thank you. Ms. Deskovich.
Option 2 is my preference. I agree pretty much with everything that Misty said, and even Andy. I'm okay with having school on Veterans Day, with the asterisks that we drive from top down, how important it is to celebrate that day, maybe even suggest some programs, maybe facilitate a program and work with Leading and Learning to really have that as a spectacular day that we honor our vets. I especially like if we're able to do that, honor our vets, and then also have the week-long Thanksgiving. It's a win-win. Concerns, which I haven't heard yet, are teachers losing that day to prepare grades, I believe, am I right with that? Yes. That they will lose that with that calendar option. So I feel like we need to hear from our teachers to see, I mean, maybe they're fine because they'll have a whole week off at Thanksgiving too, or maybe they really don't want to lose that day. So I would like to have some feedback from them before we would go with that final decision. Friday start date, I'm much like Misty. Thursday, Friday would be great. Can't do it. Friday's not a deal breaker. Love the March spring break. I think that's it. Oh, and the 2-year, I love planning for 2 years with an asterisk because you never know it. So I'm pretty much in agreement with everybody so far.
Mr. Susan?
Start date, great, I agree. The March spring break, great. And basically Veterans Day, I agree that we need to have that during school. And I'll tell you because as a guy that was overseeing putting all those veterans speaking projects into the 4 counties around us, they were so excited to be able to go in and actually impact the students on those days and have those celebrations. And I'll tell you, that celebration we went to this year was absolutely phenomenal. Like, to have that on Veterans Day means more to the students, and I think in a learning environment than it would be the other way around. And I think that you would get a lot of impact by having Veterans Day if it falls during the school year. Where my piece is, and Thanksgiving, again, I could go to the 3. I don't really like the whole week. But here's where I'm coming from. As a former teacher, we just didn't have time to plan. Like, we just never had time to plan. And so what ended up happening is that, like, we say we put spring break and we say, okay, because that falls right around the end of the third 9 weeks. I'm telling you, the last thing I wanted to do was pick up my plan book during spring break, right? And as we took away the extra planning throughout the years and we did all those things, we've slowly taken away the time for our teachers to plan. So what I would like to add is a lot of these breaks are great, Veterans Day and focusing on all these things of when we're going to be off for Christmas and all that. We need to set in a day right after the 9 weeks where they have an opportunity for the whole day, not a professional development day, where they actually sit down and can plan, put in their grades for the 9 weeks, and then also plan for the upcoming 9 weeks. That would be such a tremendous help and such a strategic help because the teachers could have that. Now, I'm not against taking a day away from Thanksgiving, a Monday or a Tuesday, to put that day in. And I'll tell you, if you do that, you avoid, which some of these calendars were doing, which is some of them have a 60-day window where there's no time off. So you're going to have this massive amount, and we all know the walls start to climb with the kids the longer you have. So by creating these 4 situations where teachers have the day to plan, they're supposed to be there and everything else, we not only give them the opportunity to do better as teachers, but we also have the opportunity to break it up and to have a good system. So I would say that if we're looking at kind of a structure, I'm more emphasized on giving those 4 days. And I'll tell you, one of the other things that I'm seeing on all the calendars is that the second semester, which is our most important time for testing, I can remember being in school and just saying, my gosh, another day. Like, I mean, it just seemed like you would just get the kids grooved after a week and a half, and then we have another, and if you look at the holidays, there's a series of days through the second semester where you don't get a solid 3 weeks of just pounding away. You know what I mean? Going through it, and it's just another day off, and then another day off. So what I would like to say to my fellow board members in giving direction is that we focus on giving a day after the 9 weeks, and then also focus on maybe taking some of those days and moving them towards the first semester if we can. Less in the second semester for days off. Does that make sense to you?
No, I do understand, but keep in mind, again, those have to be 90-day segment.
No, I know.
Periods of time, so.
And some of them you have Christmas going into,
January 11th.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so whereas we can move dates and move them around, we can actually save and put them somewhere else. That's all. So
Yeah.
if that works, that would be a big thing. I will tell you that taking those tests and running them through the second semester was a nightmare because of all the chop. And then also, when we go to the professional development days, literally, when we didn't have the days to actually do our work, we're sitting there doing our work instead of paying attention to the professional development days. We're just sitting in the back doing the planning. I mean, it was just, it didn't make sense. And it's not right for Ms. Moore, and it's not right for anybody else to do that. So that was it. And then I just wanted to say, great job.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity at O'Galley High School. I've heard really good things about you from everybody else that says that when they go to your trainings and everything else. I wanted to say thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Was I clear enough on the directive of the days off
I
after
think
9?
so. Thank
Okay.
you, Mr. Susan. And before I make my comments, it really doesn't seem to matter because it does seem like there's a pretty good consensus that calendar 2 is the calendar that I think everyone would like to go with maybe a few massagings of that. Certainly, I think that was, of all the calendars, that was the one that I would have, I think when we talked, was the one that I would have mentioned as well. As you know, my beef was again starting on Friday. I still don't think it's a great thing to do, but it sounds like there's consensus that that's okay, and certainly I wouldn't stand in front of that. Interesting discussion about Veterans Day. I can see it from both ways. I tend to go with Mr. Susan's thought that the week, an entire week at Thanksgiving is probably a little long, especially if we're going to give 3 weeks over Christmas, which I think is extremely too long. And I think that is where some of the massaging that Mr. Susan brings up, and I think Mr. Ziegler brought up as well, can happen. There's a whole extra week there that nothing's going on. And, I don't know anybody else, but, colleges have 3 weeks off. Most school districts, I've never seen 3.5 weeks off on one calendar. That's almost a full month. That's a long time. And I think that there's probably a way that we can incorporate some of those days, still keeping the 90 days and addressing some of the teacher issues. I do like the March thing. So I think if I'm getting everyone's, sensing everyone, calendar 2 seems to be the way to go, with a few massagings of perhaps looking at some of those days of being able to move it around a little bit. Working with Dr. Kint and with Leading and Learning, I think will help quite a bit to figure out exactly where those days could be used better, maybe.
Yeah,
Instead of taking 3 weeks off at Christmas and then trying to cram everything in on the backside of it.
Yeah, that was a concern across the board. The balancing of that is we need to extend through May for testing. So those days have to come from someplace. So yes, I agree. We'll look at that and see if there's any other.
But even if you went half of that week, and backed up, instead of pushing the exams to the end of the Memorial Day week, you move it up a
Understood.
day, and then that gives teachers an extra
Yeah.
day, and I think there's probably a few things there. Yes, Misty?
One request. Well, first of all, let me say that you did a phenomenal job in getting diverse input into the calendars, which I appreciate more than I can explain to you. So great job on that. Thank you to all that gave input, and thank you for understanding the importance of taking all of that input and doing your best. I think when we met, the first thing you said to me is, we're not going to make anyone happy. And we never do, regardless of how hard we try. So the best we can hope for is to make the most happy, right? With that being said, absolutely, I think taking this feedback and going back to Dr. Kenton to leading and learning is important, but I would also ask that we ensure that we have input from teachers and administrators as well, just to make sure, because I feel like they bring an important perspective to that. So if there's something that we are not considering in that process, as you all have that follow-up conversation, just a check back to make sure that there's nothing big that we have missed, would be much appreciated.
Will do.
Yeah, I would agree completely, and I didn't mean to, utilize our BFT reach into the schools and being able to pull some of that information and those thoughts would be great.
Mr. Craig?
Yes, Mr. Ziegler.
One, I do agree with the day for the teachers. I like that. Taking it out of Thanksgiving makes a lot of sense, except I think human nature is going to be, if you take Monday of Thanksgiving week and make it a work day, everybody's going to take a vacation that day, and there's going to be a big sucking sound and shortage of employees.
Dr. Sullivan's having a heart attack in the back of the room.
Am I right?
Well, I think that's why he said actually two.
I would do that in a heartbeat. I'll just be honest with you. I think most people would. So while that makes a lot of sense, and it's a great place to get that day for the teachers' planning day, we need to be careful that we don't dictate a nightmare for our schools. So maybe
I think that was the
do
taking two, I
just
think was what we had both kind of said.
So
Sticking with what we have now. Do you have some sort of semblance of
Yeah,
an
I have
idea?
great marching orders. I think it's very doable. Again, and I didn't mean to start with our meetings with, well, we're not going to make anybody happy. But we're absolutely going to try to do the best we can for the students and the teachers and the families in Brevard County with this calendar and hope for the best.
All right, thank you so much for
Thank you.
for everything you've done. Dr. Blackburn.
Last and final presentation of the evening is the annual report to the school board from the Independent Citizens Oversight Committee, or the ICOC. Gary Schifrin, chair of the ICOC, will make the presentation. Mr. Schifrin, like the tide, Mr. Schifrin.
Chairman Craig, Dr. Blackburn, school board members, I'm honored to continue to be the chairperson of the ICOC and have this opportunity to make this presentation, although I already realize it's been a long night and I'll try to expedite the presentation. This slide reflects the current membership of the ICOC. The charter requires at least 7 and no more than 11 members. The school board appoints the ICOC members based on a recommendation from the ICOC. The board recently reappointed 6 members to another 2-year term. The purpose of the ICOC is to provide general oversight of the sales surtax expenditures. The ICOC meets every other month, and we review a detailed package of information that includes revenues, expenditures by group, type, and school. Out-of-sequence and contingency projects are identified at each meeting. The ICOC is also advised on project status relative to facility renewal, educational technology, and school security investments. This year's annual report covers the sales surtax programs from its inception through September the 30th, 2017. The report is comprehensive, and the appendices contain considerable references material regarding the ICOC and the sales surtax program. The sales surtax program was built from 2014 facility assessments done in-house prior to the referendum. Based on a priority scoring matrix for facility renewal, a very specific program of work was developed in aggregate. This program only funded 22% of the identified facility renewal needs. This means projects may seem incomplete and projects cannot always be optimized for performance. Considerable work may be left for future phases. Through September 30th, 2017, program revenue totaled $109 million, and this is the good news, which exceeded estimates by $24 million. This revenue is not extra, as the program budget target of $198 million has not been reached. The accelerated collections have allowed the district to address critical failures and invest in early design for upcoming projects. Until September 2017, monthly revenues exceeded prior year revenues. In September, October, and November 2017, revenues were slightly less than 2016, but still well above the original projections. This slide indicates the sales surtax allocation by group through September 30th, 2017. Sales surtax encumbered and expenditures totaled $93 million through September 30th, which is roughly 90% of revenues. This means that the surtax revenues are being invested in the schools as quickly as possible. The facility renewal expenditures are heavily focused on mechanical system renewal. Many projects could use additional investments in building, envelope, and plumbing, which should be quantified in the next facility assessment. Out of sequence, unbudgeted or under-budgeted system failures account for roughly 10% of the program. So far, these have not impacted the planned schedule. The ICOC is advised when critical failures occurred or when critical needs are identified that may warrant work to be done out of sequence or with contingency funds. Since the inception of the surtax program, the district has also invested over $7 million in capital to support facility renewal projects. Examples include investments to improve HVAC system efficiency, upgrading wastewater treatment plants, and building envelope renewal. Expenditures are heavily focused on contracted services, which include contractors, construction managers, and design builders. The district also uses the Owner Direct Purchase Program, which allows the district to purchase major equipment and materials directly, thereby saving sales taxes. So far, owner direct purchases total over $11 million, which translates to a sales tax savings of over $600,000, at a point roughly halfway through the program. The district uses multiple procurement methods to efficiently complete projects. The procurement method utilizes based on the nature, size, and urgency of the project. In the facility renewal arena, the marketplace is becoming more saturated with work, which is creating challenges in securing enough qualified subcontractors to focus on the district's work in the summertime. The educational technology team has been very successful with the federal E-rate program, receiving $7.9 million in discounts for 2016 and 2017. This expands the purchasing power for educational technology components under the sales surtax program. The first 25 major facility renewal projects have been substantially completed through summer 2017, with others completed out of sequence such as Southwest and Bayside. So the surtax program is slightly ahead of schedule. In summer 2017, the team executed 16 major and 2 minor facility renewal projects. Another 12 capital projects were also executed at the same time. This volume of work in a 2-month period continues to challenge staff, contractors, and subcontractors. Planning and design are already underway for summer 2018 projects. If funding allows, design for the summer 2019 projects may start ahead of schedule. The report you received has a section detailing major projects with some photographs. This report is also posted on the website. The ICOC recommended and the school board approved the advancement of the district school security program utilizing a temporary transfer of resources from facility renewal to security. The project is now well underway and scheduled for completion in April of 2018. The ICOC is comfortable that the district is implementing the sales surtax program in accordance with the ballot initiatives and district policies and procedures. In addition to ICOC oversight, the auditors continue to provide their independent review on a frequent basis. The appendices to the annual report include further documentation regarding the program that may be of interest, including the charter, details on prioritization, status of construction contracts, and detailed expenditure summaries. All of this documentation, as well as each ICOC agenda package, is posted on the website for public review. Looking forward, the staff is working towards more analytics regarding energy savings, work order history, and other data that will build the foundation for more effective capital project planning. Preparing for the next round of facility assessments is also on the horizon. As members of the ICOC, we appreciate the opportunity to serve our community in this important role. That concludes my presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions or refer them to the experts behind me.
Thank you, Mr. Schifrin. Do any of my board colleagues have any comments, questions? Ms. Belford?
I would just like to thank Mr. Schifrin for all of his work on the ICOC and of course the rest of the committee members as well. You all bring so much to the conversation about the work that's being done with the sales surtax, and we appreciate your volunteering your time and energy and talent.
Thank you very much.
And Merry Christmas, Santa.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Dr. Blackburn, anything?
No comments, just to echo the sentiments of appreciation for the ICOC, our auditors, our staff. We're doing a really, really good job, and you nailed the components in your comments in adhering to promises made in 2014. It's really important that we do that, and we appreciate your oversight and your partnership.
Thank you, sir. And I would be remiss if I didn't recognize Sue Hahn and Dane Theodore, because they're the architects behind all of this.
Well, oh, sorry. Mr.
No, it's okay. I just want to say thanks as a former member. I know what you guys go through and how much hard work it is. I do notice that we are close to 22%, only 22% of the facility renewal actually of what we need is going to be funded through this. Along with, we've come up with a couple school security projects that we tried to get you guys to do and stuff like that. Is there, as we move closer, are you guys putting together a mini recommendation for us as to what that would look like if you guys could spend a little bit your needs that you're seeing, more money in security, more money in IT? Is that anywhere on your radar?
Well, we know that when we reach the $198 million, that after that, it'll all be extra. It's not extra yet, even though we've far exceeded the expectations. So at that point, there either will be another assessment or input in regards to how that money will be spent.
Okay.
Great. Mr. Schifrin, thank you. As you know, we had the pleasure of seeing the student government leaders up here, and you know, and I truly am amazed, because those are community leaders, and those kids will be you. So and your team, because that's what you are. You're volunteering. You're better looking, but that was from Dr. Blackburn. But no, seriously, you know, you're walking the walk and talking the talk and standing up and volunteering your time and remaining engaged. And I can't thank you enough. So we appreciate it. Please pass that to your entire team.
I certainly will, and I guess I just can't give it up. That's why.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right, I know it's been a while, but we are at public comment, and I'd like to get through that before we take a break. If my colleagues, we have about 5, I think, here. So we are at public comment. Maximum allotted time for each speaker is 3 minutes. Please be reminded that the statements shall be directed to the board chair. No person may address or question board members individually. The board chairperson may interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statement when the statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. If an individual does not observe reasonable decorum, the board chairperson may request that individual leave the meeting. Please keep in mind that we often have children present or children viewing our board meetings, and we encourage an environment appropriate for their viewing. And while no action will be taken this evening by the board on items raised in this public discussion, board members may assist with connecting public speakers to district staff that can assist with concerns, respond in brief to comments made by speakers that require immediate clarification, and request that a response to specific speakers be placed on the school board's website under the section called For the Record. These responses will take place at the end of the public comment portion of the meeting. I request that you speak into the microphone and state your name. Just a reminder on the time clock, it is just a system of lights. So when you're green, you've started. Yellow means you have a minute left, and when it turns red, I do ask that you wrap up your thoughts at that point. So we have, I believe, 5 speakers, since one already spoke. We'll start with Amy Kaminsky, Anthony Colucci, and Vanessa Skipper.
Good evening. My name is Amy Kaminsky. I'm a teacher at Melbourne High School. In October, I was told one of you during a meeting at Satellite High made the offhand comment, I know, teachers want to be paid like professional athletes. University of Tennessee's defensive lineman Inky Johnson was a projected first-round pick. During his final college season, he made one of his typically hard tackles. With that hit, he lost the use of his right arm. When his doctor told him he would never play football again, he used a series of repetitive statements to express his grief. I will use his same format to express my sorrow over the statement you made about teachers. No disrespect to you leaders, but every year I help students with feelings of suicide and abuse. No disrespect to you leaders, but every year I help students try to deal with the death of a parent. No disrespect to you leaders, but every year I help students gain confidence and knowledge. No disrespect to you leaders, but every year I sponsor clubs or teams. No disrespect to you leaders, but you do not do this. I do. No disrespect to you leaders, but when I started teaching in 2000, I made just under $34,000. No disrespect to you leaders, but 18 years later, I only make $45,850. No disrespect to you leaders, but that's a far cry from what a professional athlete makes. No disrespect to you leaders, but $12,000 in 18 years is an embarrassment. No disrespect to you leaders, but with your 1% raise last year, I made less because of insurance costs. My colleagues and I deserve better. We do not need to be placated with pats on the head and statements like we wish we could give you more. We are not asking that you provide us with a vehicle and pay for our gas, although that would be lovely. We are not asking to be paid like professional athletes, although that too would be nice. What we are asking for is to be treated with dignity and fairness. Eliminating testing is more about the students. Eliminating observations and PGPs is simply smart business because there was no correlation between improved teaching and those aspects of our evaluation. And opening health clinics has yet to prove of any benefit. Our governor and his cronies have destroyed public education in our state and vilified teachers for the past 8 years. We do not need our local leaders doing the same by implying that teachers are unrealistic and greedy and want something for nothing. No disrespect to you leaders, but I do think you can do better than 1%, and I ask you please to find a way. Thank you for your time. Have a good night.
Thank you, Ms. Kaminsky. Anthony Colucci.
My name is Anthony Colucci. I'm the Vice President of the Brevard Federation of Teachers. I just don't get the dynamics of this board's decision-making process. Why is it when people you perceive as powerful are at odds with you, you cave with little or no resistance? For $50,000, you quickly settled the software deal, which was like throwing millions of dollars in a toilet and flushing. You folded on some of your redistricting plan when a couple of hotshot space industry CEOs challenged you. Our local legislative delegation makes horrible decisions for education, and you say and do nothing. But when your teachers, like one you just saw, give their blood, sweat, and tears for this district and ask for a raise comparable with other local districts, you dig in, deflect, and deny their request. I'm going on nearly 2 decades of teaching here in Brevard County. God willing, I'll be teaching 3 more decades here in Brevard County. I am but one of many teachers with this kind of commitment to our schools. I'm vested in the school district. You weren't here when I started, and you're not going to be here when I'm done. Teachers cannot and will not suffer through another board and superintendent's poor decision-making. We will not let Brevard County become devastated by a teacher shortage. We're not okay with students being taught in overcrowded classrooms or by substitutes. We're telling you compensation matters. Have you heard about what other districts are doing? In addition to the $1,125 raise highly effective teachers in Orange County will receive, their school board just decided to give teachers a $500 retention bonus. In St. Lucie County, not only are highly effective teachers getting a $1,033 raise, their school board just decided to give all employees a $250 holiday bonus. In Broward and Palm Beach County, their highly effective teachers are getting a 3.5% raise. You need to immediately figure out a way to increase your salary offer other than rearranging the pot of money. Pay for performance is a requirement by state law. Last year and this year, you struggled to find funding for it. So instead of putting all you could into pay for performance, you chose to fund 14 new initiatives. Come on. The state didn't say you had to do those things. They certainly didn't provide you with the money to do those things. You made the conscious decision to fund all of those things, a decision we have to live with. Make no mistake about it, BFT will continue to advocate, educate, and agitate until this district is on the right course. Starting January 8th, our teachers will begin a work to the contract campaign. We'll continue that until we have a favorable contract. Whether that's next week, next month, or with the next school board and superintendent, that's up to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colucci. Vanessa Skipper, followed by Ronald Bradley.
Good evening, Vanessa Skipper, teacher at Cocoa High School and Vice President of the Brevard Federation of Teachers. A question was posed earlier of our CFO about how much a bookkeeper makes, so I went ahead and took a few minutes to look that up. I believe they're grade 22. Their starting pay is $13.23 an hour, and it looks like if you make it all the way through a 30-year career as a bookkeeper in our district, you'll make $17.67. I talked a little bit about our 1010 brothers and sisters the last time I was here as well. I mean, you guys can probably do some math to know that you didn't offer them that much of an increase for people that do carry such a weighty responsibility in our schools. If you're interested, that's on page 47 of the 1010 contract. As far as some calendar concerns, I am glad to see that lots of stakeholders were given input with that. There were a couple insinuations I want to address. First day is definitely not a fun day. I consider that first couple weeks of school. We build a classroom community. We get to know one another. We set behavior expectations. In fact, that first day and the days that follow are the most critical days in the classroom because it's those moments where you're either going to grab them or not. Also, Veterans Day, I think many of our teachers do a phenomenal job, whether we are in the classroom or not in the classroom, of making sure our kids understand what Veterans Day is and how important it is. And in fact, my own journalism students put together a video recognizing and celebrating all of the teachers who were veterans who our teachers on our campus now. I believe it is already contractual, well, not already contractual, but we did tentatively agree on a planning day for teachers that first semester. And speaking on behalf of teachers, we absolutely would like planning time to be able to grade papers and plan great lessons for our students. I've been asking myself a couple questions, and I think that both questions are questions that all of district leaders should ask themselves on a daily basis. And the two that stick out in my mind are, why do teachers leave, and why do teachers stay? And as I personally pondered these questions, I wondered which answer is the most important. Obviously, one gives us kind of a glass half full look, one gives us a glass half empty look. And I could tell you tons of reasons why I stay. Dr. Blackburn met two of them on the sidelines at the state football game, two of my journalists who were absolutely thrilled to be able to cover the game in the mix of all the other reporters. But why do teachers leave? I had the opportunity to attend a wedding last week with a teacher, or a former teacher in this district, and she was my son's teacher. And he absolutely loved her. In fact, when I would go pick him up from school, he wouldn't be in daycare. He'd still be in her classroom at 5 p.m. She left. She left because she makes more money taking pictures at weddings than she does working as a teacher in this district.
Thank you, Ms.
That's
Skipper.
sad. You have to do better.
Ronald Bradley, followed by Sonia Baldwin.
Good evening, Superintendent Blackburn and your staff. My name is Ron Bradley. I live in Rockledge. What I want to talk to you about is I think our schools are missing the boat nowadays. We do a lot of brain picking with tests and stuff, and we don't teach them the dirty values in life, how to treat other people. I graduated in Homer High School, District 208, in 1957. When I went to school, if you didn't behave on the bus, you got kicked off the bus. You walked to school. After I got out of school, I got into trade. I served 3.5 years in the sheet metal trade. I moved to Florida and decided to get in a different trade. And I told my wife I need to get in the air conditioning trade. I learned to trade by telling a man that I'd work for him for nothing if he'd teach me the air conditioning trade. I worked for the city of St. Petersburg. I worked on the first city buses in St. Petersburg, Florida that had air conditioning in it. I worked for a contractor that we did a school system, and I was a 2-year apprentice, and they had a problem with the chiller, and they'd had several people working on it. I went out and I called a man from the company that made the manufacturer's chiller, and I says, I think they got the water flowing backwards in the chiller. And the guy says, you're right, young man. They called the company in. The guy says, it don't make any difference. Our boss talked to him, and the manufacturer representative says, that's fine. You can run that water any way you want through that chiller, but we're going to void the warranty. There's a certain way it needs to do. I went to serve my apprenticeship school at Dixie Highlands High School as a pipe fitter. In pipe fitter, you learn welding, you're a pipe fitter, you're a plumber, you do refrigeration, air conditioning work, and sprinkler fittings and steam fittings. I've been there and I've done it all. I worked for a school system in Lake County, and I worked for contractors in Orlando that had contract to doing chillers for the Orange County school systems. I worked in 1984 for a mechanical contractor. If we couldn't fix it, it wasn't broke. There was 10 people working in the trade. I started in 1984. I was there 16 years. Now it's one of the biggest mechanical contractors in Orlando. They do anything from air qualities, energy management, anything to do with molds. And what we always did, we could go in and do work that people couldn't get straight. And so I was very fortunate to work in the trade. After I got out, I worked in different areas. I worked in powerhouses, nuclear pipe fitters, steam fitters, controls. I was the only apprentice that worked on the nuclear powerhouse at Crystal River, Florida, when it came out of the ground. I was that fortunate.
Mr.
I
Bradley,
moved to Crystal River in 1967. My
Sir?
wife's 5 foot. She drove a school bus. She weighs 100 pounds soaking wet. She had trouble with a kid in high school. She grabbed that kid by the ear, marched him off the bus. The principal was sitting there and said, Mrs. Bradley, you can't kick that kid off the bus. She said, you watch me. Shut the door and drove off. She
Mr.
didn't have any
Bradley,
trouble with that kid the
excuse me,
rest of the year.
Sir, your time is up. I do appreciate your comments. Your 3 minutes is up. I do appreciate your comments, though.
I'd be willing to work with you, anybody I can, and your entertainment systems and stuff.
I believe
But I
Mr.
wanna see
Susan will probably
trades
be in
in the
touch with you.
schools.
Thank you very much, sir.
Can we get his contact information?
I have his contact, and you will have it. Sonia Baldwin, I believe she may have left, and we will contact her by email. Sonia Baldwin? Okay. Board wishes to thank this evening's speakers. Your willingness to speak to the board is greatly appreciated. We have been at it for 2.5 hours. I think we probably need about a 5 to 8 minute break. Let's not make it 10. We are in recess. And welcome back. Oops, sorry. Welcome back. Thank you for the prompt attention to the rejoin. That moves us into the consent agenda. Dr. Blackburn.
There are 21 agenda items under this category.
Thank you, Dr. Blackburn. Does any board member wish to pull any items?
I do.
Ms. Deskovich.
F27, which is listed as F28 on our supplemental agenda. It's the satellite high track surfacing.
Anyone else? Mr. Susan?
I sent you that. I'd like to pull F26, F29, and I was going to pull F15, but I'll work with Mark on that.
Okay, so you're asking to pull F26 Educational Plant Survey and F29 District Facilities Work Project.
F12 to the minutes.
And F12. Anyone else? Pam, would you please pull those 4 items for discussion? That being said, I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent items with the exception of the items that were pulled for discussion.
Move to approve. Second.
Moved by Ms. Belford, seconded by Mr. Ziegler. Is there any discussion?
No, sir.
Please vote. Do we have to do a voice vote? No. There we go. Motion passes 5-0. We'll start with go in order, F12, the minutes. Mr. Susan.
Thank you. In looking at the minutes...
Actually, you need to make a motion, and then...
I make a motion.
Move to approve.
Oh, move to approve. Sorry.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Susan.
Sorry.
Seconded by Ms. Belford, and now discussion. Please lead, Mr. Susan.
So I was looking at some of the minutes, and the one that came across was on page 4 of the board workshop attendance boundaries draft. If you guys could click on that and go to page 4, I can show you what I'm trying to get at.
Which one?
Page 4 of the attendance boundaries minutes. And if you go to the last line prior to closing remarks on page 4, you'll notice it says there's also some discussion on K through 8 model as well as 6 through 8 model as well as K through 8 model. What I was looking at, and there was a little bit of discrepancy with Dr. Blackburn today, was that we gave board direction for staff to look into 2 things, which was 6th grade in the middle school and look into a north, central, and south 6th grade into middle school. And I just wanted the minutes to reflect that. That was all. And if there was any discussion, if you guys wanted to talk about it.
So you wanted specifics in the minutes about what the direction was?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sure we can add that.
That's
You're
it.
not contesting the K through 8, because I believe that was there as well.
Yeah, no, the K through 8 model.
Okay.
But specifically having staff look at the 6th grade in the middle school along with it into north, central, and south.
All right,
That's
any
all.
other discussion on that?
That's it.
No, I agree. That was board direction.
Okay, if you can make those changes, Pam, and I'll entertain, I'm sorry, Ms. Belford.
I do have a request for an amendment on the 2017-11-21 organization of the board minutes. Page 2 of 17. Under election of chairman. That was the evening that Mr. Craig was moved into the chair position, and I think through all of the confusion back and forth, the minutes actually reflect that I did not cast a vote for Mr. Craig. I did not hear it. Well, and I was just going to say, you probably did not hear it. Not only I was down there facing away from you, and there was some hesitation waiting on Mr. Craig to kind of give us some direction where he was going, and then Matt and I both supported at the same time, I think. So if we could just let the minutes reflect that I did, in fact, support Mr. Craig in moving
Okay.
into the chair position, that would be
That's
fabulous.
wonderful.
Good recovery.
Thank
Good
you, Pam.
recovery. Excellent. All right.
That's the only additional amendment I
That
regret.
being said, with those additions made. Is there any other discussion? Please vote.
You might want to do a voice vote because what you're voting on doesn't reflect what you guys have just said.
Okay. So let's do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Vote passes 5-0. On to your next one. I believe that is yours, F26. Mr. Susan, your motion?
Move to discuss.
Second.
Okay, it's actually a motion
to approve.
There you go, thank you. A move to approve by Mr. Susan, seconded by Ms. Belford. Discussion, Mr. Susan.
If you look, there's two attachments that are on here. The first is the 2017 Educational Plant Survey along with the FDOE approval of new construction. In the Educational Plant Survey, I wanted to point out that there is no direction for any middle school. It is showing direction towards 2 elementary school constructions. And I don't know how we view the fact that we're looking into a possible move of 6th grade into middle school, how that affects this Educational Plant Survey. I just keep hearing every time we say something in other instances that they say, well, that's not part of the progression plan, that's not part of the plant survey. So I was taking this opportunity, since it's on the agenda, to say, do we need to put an asterisk, do we need to touch base with this as we're moving forward? And I also wanted to point out that the FDOE has not approved our elementary school construction based upon capacity issues. And I asked Dane if there's any direction he can give to that.
The omission of a middle school in the Ed Plan survey is basically one of timing. The Ed Plan survey must be approved at least every 5 years. The middle school, based on our calculations of available capacity in the middle school area, is in our 5 to 10 year plan, so that we did not include it in here. We certainly can at the board's direction. This is simply a draft that is before you for approval. Given your direction, I can certainly include that along with the elementary schools for approval or consideration by the FDOE.
Just as possible direction, because the main argument that was made as part of the workshop was that we either are going to build a middle school or an elementary school or a K through 8 based upon staff's recommendation in our discussion. A 5-year plan for something else might not be there, so I didn't know if, being the fact that we are in the process of this, to not allow it to be on there, I wanted to try to add that if it was needed. And it sounds like it is, so.
We can certainly do that. I would, since we're asking for the elementary schools, and we can add a middle school, again, they would look at it in the same context that we do have capacity, but it certainly doesn't hurt to add it in. So if I can receive direction on that, I will add that in prior to submitting it for the DOE's consideration.
Mr. Theodore, are those plans amended along the way, though? I mean, you can send an amendment at any time, can't you?
Yes, sir. It's called a spot survey, so you
Right.
can amend your survey at any time.
So, I mean, we can either add it in now or we can wait, Mr. Ziegler.
I was going to go along the same lines. Is there a timeline for having this submitted? And then we can make those changes, because that's obviously our prerogative until we give specific direction. If you have to make this, submit this, I'm okay with doing that. I do agree that we need to focus on that analysis of 6, 7, 8, but to clarify, if you are to make that request of the state for approval for construction, obviously you'd have to do that, and you just said that we have the capacity. If stated like that, I would assume we would get the same no vote from the state. However, I think it would be best if it was predicated with the idea of 6th grade being introduced. Do we then have the capacity if we introduce 6th grade? I don't believe that we do have the capacity to include 6th grade without a creative plan. And part of that plan would be creating possible additions at some elementary schools, middle schools, and building a middle school. So I think we got to be careful how we ask that question of the state for permission to expand or build a middle school. But I'm okay with approving this now and updating this as we get more solid information and to giving you better direction.
Any other comments? Ms. Belford?
I believe Mr. Ziegler and Mr. Theodore, correct me if I'm wrong, when the state's looking at approving additional construction, they're not looking specifically at K through 6 capacity, middle school capacity, high school capacity. They're looking at total capacity in the district, aren't they?
No, ma'am. They would differentiate between school types so that you may have, for instance, capacity in high school and elementary, but not in middle, or vice versa. So it depends on which type of school that you're asking them for new capacity. Mr. Ziegler is correct that if we were to move 6th grade into our middle school configuration, we would create a situation where we would not have enough capacity, and I would imagine, would approve that. There is no wrong answer here. We can delay. There's nothing urgent about this. I was bringing it before you simply to test where the DOE is going to fall on this. In other words, we are, as you know, under construction with their funds, basically, not even local funds, on a O'Galley aviation laboratory that needs to be approved. So in that sense, there is some urgency. They indicated informally that they would approve that particular project, that new capacity, because it's associated with a very unique program. But we don't have formal approval, so I really would like to get that before we open it. We are on track to start the COCO design, and so what I am saying in short is I think we should know whether or not the DOE is going to approve the use of our local funds for these projects, specifically in this case, the COCO project, because we are at the cusp of proceeding with that for the next year opening, or a 19 opening. But we have to start construction. So there is no need to do it. There is no burning urgency to do it, but I would recommend that we go ahead and submit something to get an indication of where the DOE is at this point with local funding. We can amend it if we choose to go for middle school, but I think we'll get a good sense of where they're at.
Mr. Craig?
Yes, ma'am.
Just one additional question, Mr. Theodore, and I don't know if you or Ms. Enval are better suited to weigh in on this one, but with the additional restriction on local funds, there was some discussion at FSBA that restriction is not clearly statutorily defined, that it is actually a DOE interpretation that is restricting our local funds. Do you have any input on that? Is it in fact an issue of DOE interpreting statute to restrict our local funds, or does statute clearly state even our locally generated funds cannot be used without approval?
The issue started with a new legislation on a cap per student station cost. So they with the I think it started in the 16 legislation. It was 7029, which was implemented as a result of 7069 this year. So as of July 1st of this year, they began taking control of local funds on a cap per student station cost. So that is in legislation. The DOE interpreted that as now, since they must regulate the cost per student station cost, they now have the authority and the obligation to have that put into the Ed Plan survey, and they approve the Ed Plan survey for new capacity. So it's an interpretation, I believe. They talked about the legislation requiring it. I nor my counterparts see any specific legislation language that says new capacity, it says cost per student station. I believe it'll be tested.
One follow-up, Mr. Craig, and then I'm going to stop, I promise. If I may, then I would like to request that Ms. Enval, when she has the opportunity, give us some input as to what happens if we view it as new capacity is not included in that statutory language and opt to have, yes. If we,
Rebel you.
well, I just think it has to be a part of the conversation. Should we choose to exert what we believe should be and is statutorily local control, what are the ramifications there? I'm done, Mr. Craig.
Ms. Deskovich, anything? Mr. Ziegler?
To follow up on that, so that creates a challenge, primarily the cost per student station in building a new school, because you have to incorporate pro rata share of the cafeteria and of the media center and the parking lot and all that stuff.
Yes, sir.
But if we were to build an addition at a middle school, does that make it a lot easier to come in under the per student cost?
It does.
It does. So that helps a lot. So that helps getting approval, coming in under cost per student station by going to the 6, 7, 8 model. So there's a lot of benefits there too. But let's see if we can't push the envelope either way.
Okay.
So going forward, Mr. Theodore, if I'm hearing you correct, is that your cause for concern is the projects that we have currently, getting them into a plant survey so we can get approval from the DOE.
Yes.
And getting this in, and you're saying that we can amend this elementary school if we decide to move with a middle school instead in the process. I think we said that we would like to somehow either amend it at a later date or do it now, just add it into our plant survey. What was that direction? I didn't hear that. That was
I will weigh in and say that we have a board-approved capital plan that is for 2 elementary schools. We do not have a voted-on, board-approved plan for a middle school. I would hesitate to just add in language that is not specific to anything that we've actually voted on. I think that is a road that we really don't want to go down. We have voted on a plan that includes the 2 schools, and certainly we can amend that at any time and along the way. But in order to do so, I would not be in favor of amending language to something that we don't even know what we're talking about. So certainly there may be a time when we get to that point that we go ahead and amend that. But I think for the for Mr. Theodore's role, I think this is the probably the best way, at least in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah.
With that said, the next item that I had pulled,
right,
mine, you can pull it because it's the same regard.
Very well.
One distinguishes to the next.
All
So
right.
we're down to Ms. Deskovich's now.
Well, no, we still have to
Nope.
vote.
Sorry. Do we have any other comments, any other discussion on lost where we're at, F26? I'll call the question. Please vote.
Supposed to verbal vote?
Oh, no, because
We didn't make
we
any
didn't change
changes. We
anything.
didn't make any changes, so we can vote on it.
And the motion passes 5-0. F27 is the Satellite High track. Do I hear a motion?
Move to approve.
Moved by Ms. Deskovich, seconded by Ms. Belford. Any discussion? Yes, there is. So Ms. Deskovich, please.
So I'm not sure how familiar you all are with what's going on at Satellite High with their track. They have raised most of the money, most of the funds. I'm going to ask Mr. Elliott from Satellite High to come up and give us a few remarks on this, because it looks like on the agenda there is several things we're voting on, and one of the things is $25,000 to finish the rubberizing of the track. It's a total of $144,000. They've pulled money from a multitude of resources, lots of community involvement, but there's a remaining $25,000, and if you look under the funding source for that $25,000, it says to be determined. And I asked Mr. Theodore what that meant. Was there some secret money somewhere? And he said, no, it's literally to be determined. So we're approving this. They're kind of on a hopeful timeline, but there isn't a funding source. So that has to be discussed. But Mr. Elliott, if you could tell us a little bit about how you've come up with the 144 so far, that would be.
Good evening, Dr. Blackburn, school board members. I think in this particular project, it's really important to understand a couple of key points. First of all, when the track will be completed, the total facility just for the track is going to be right at $440,000 the school board will have. It'll be just a wonderful, top-notch facility at Satellite High School. The second point is it's not just a Satellite High School track. It's going to, in raising the funds, the city of Satellite Beach, as you see, there's a contract there. They're going to donate $30,000. The Indian Harbor City of Indian Harbor Beach donated $5,000. The Delora Middle School has donated $5,000, and the idea of this whole program is that it's going to be open 2 days or 2 evenings a week when the school is not using the facility, and on the weekend, which is going to have access to Patrick Air Force Base personnel, and that because of our proximity, and it would be more of a community type track facility. Mr. Theodore and I and Coach Doug Butler back here have worked out a lot of details, specific I could get into, and I won't unless you ask, but bottom line is it would be a really nice facility. We're hoping to host 7 track meets just in the month of March between Delora and Satellite, and 2 of those, one is the city champion for the middle schools, which is all the schools, and one is the Cape Coast Conference Championship for all the high schools. We also see this with the city that someday it would bring 2,000 people there to do an AAU Nationals and use our facility. And that would generate a lot of interest in our area, and that's why the city's gotten involved. So it's just, my point is it's not just a Satellite High School track that you'd be voting on. But we are $25,000 short. The track club raised $145,000, the city's $30,000, the other city $5,000. Mr. Theodore, and he was renovating the track as a 6-lane, and we want to make it 8-lane, rubberize it, so it's been in a couple of projects. That's why this thing is important that we come up with the last $25,000.
Can you also reference the timeline? And I asked him to do that, board, because I put this in on my capital list of requirement or requests, but we haven't had a meeting to really get in the weeds of all that, and it's now come before us on the agenda, and he was telling me earlier about his timeline of what they need to be able to use that track for track season. Good.
Right. Actually, the bid came in, and they say they can do it in 25 days. If this gets approved tonight, we get the funding. The contractor, my understanding, Dane, is they're going to be starting within the next couple of days, week, whatever, and they'll be completed by January 22nd, which is the start of track season.
Okay. I think Dr. Blackburn, did you have something you wanted to add in there, please?
No, I was just going to mention, as the board knows, there's about $750,000 of the federally connected dollars that we put aside, and we have our own self-imposed process to go through the recommendations of each board member. This item is on that list, so as soon as we get through that, then we'll be ready to go. So don't want to assume, but I'm assuming that our process is going to approve this dollar amount.
Mr. Ziegler.
Yeah, I too have this as a recommendation on the federally connected dollars, and while Dr. Blackburn's correct, we do have a process to go through to make this happen. There is a timeline that is important at this point in time, and I believe we've had some conversations about how do we make things happen, and as long as the board is okay with, well, I do have a question. We have this as approval. We could have just voted on this and be approved, and then to determine where the money is going to come, technically given approval to begin construction, and then we got to, well, actually, Dr. Blackburn, then you'd have to figure out where to get the money. We don't. We
Oh, I
shouldn't
know where to
necess-
get the money.
So if the plan is to get it from the federally connected, I think that's great, and it is expediting one piece of that. I think that's great, but the board has to be okay with expediting one of the many requests. I'm okay with that, but that's basically what it comes down to.
With understanding that 750 of federally connected would become 725 of federally
I
connected.
think it's actually 700 and agreed it would be 25 less of whatever that number is.
Yeah, got it.
Exactly. That's fine with me, and I'd like to approve this and move forward so they can get started.
Is that an official motion?
Now,
We're-
wait,
we're under
Tina
a
can make the
motion
motion.
I have a question, though. We, at one point, discussed using Vera, yeah, the rental of the Fields property money for that. I don't remember where we went with that conversation, what that money's being used for. Maybe Mr. Theodore, you know. I'm just trying to throw other options out there of different pots of money that might be available.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Malone gave us a check for, I believe, $21,000 as payment for that first event. That was deposited into the general fund. So the board would have to give direction to Ms. Zerker for the use of that.
We gave direction when that came across to not go into general fund, but to set it aside for special projects. So it technically should be set aside for this type of a thing. So whether it comes from what Dr. Blackburn, if he feels strong enough that it's okay to go one route or the other, I think that either pot of money fits that per board approval.
So it sounds to me like we have two potential options. Either 25,000 coming out of our federally connected 750,000, or actually I guess it would be 21,000 coming out of the Giles Malone dollars and the additional 4 coming out of federally connected.
Either way.
Or all of it, you know, I think there are options there. Dr. Blackburn, do you have a preference one way or another on that?
I feel comfortable taking the 25 out of the, and it's 750, 725. It's in the 700-ish area. So I feel comfortable doing that for this item. I don't feel comfortable in a sort of last-minute situation earmarking another pot of money that I haven't looked at, analyzed, or discussed with staff to do anything with. So we know we have our process with the federally connected. We know it's on there. We just have not made our final decision, but I feel comfortable approving this with the understanding that this 25 grand comes from the federally connected pot.
One last question. Mr. Elliott, is this where the conference championships will be held as opposed to Sebastian River if we get this through this year?
It'll be held at Satellite, Cape Coast Conference would be.
That's what we want. We want to stop traveling all the way to Sebastian, giving them our revenue and everything else. So
Sounds good to me.
thank you for putting this together. Thank
right,
you for
thank
putting all this together.
One last question. If it gets approved, Mr. Elliott, will you be running with the children also?
I would actually be the starter.
Okay, we'll talk.
Just one little last thing. You had mentioned also on your call today about federally connected, some of us believe should be used for servicing our families maybe that are in the military or such, and Satellite High we know has students whose parents are serving in the military. Is there any connection here to, you had mentioned on the call, that maybe members of the service would be even using the track in the evenings, running?
Absolutely. On Tuesdays and Thursdays till sunset, and on the weekends, the facility will be open. It'll be a special turnstile where, you know, there's a turnstile where you can't bring bicycles and all that kind. And we've already talked to Mr. Langdorf about verbiage on the signs so that it be accessed with the community. And I think that the Satellite Beach and Indian Harbor Beach are really excited about having a facility like that for their people to walk on, as it's much better on your ankles and knees. Dr. Blackburn could come over there and do some running on it.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott.
All right.
I'll just make a couple of quick comments. First of all, I think the project is wonderful. I am all in community partnership. I do have a very hard time with the way this is brought forward. This is not the way that we should be discussing where that federally connected money goes to. When a item comes before the board, I expect that a funding source has already been identified, not up for discussion and trying to figure out where it comes from. Timelines aside, the right thing to do would be, we have the money to cover it, and this is our recommendation. Not have the board up here trying to negotiate where different pots of money go to. That is not good budgeting. That's not good financial sense. It's not how we'd run my home. So I'm disappointed in that. That being said, I do believe that it's a great program. I think that Mr. Theodore will find the money where he needs to, whether it's out of the SIP program or wherever else he can find the money from. And if it comes out of the federally connected monies that were set aside, that's fine as well. But I just will register my disappointment in the way that it was handled. Anybody else have any comments?
I just have a question. Do we need to give direction on a funding source? I've never seen something come before us
No,
to be
that
determined.
is not
on
our position, because we approve a budget. The set-aside stuff, it was specific that we asked as a board and agreed as a leadership team to look at that. We haven't looked at that yet, and we haven't given that direction. That's my point, is that this is not the place to be doing that.
I agree. I'm just wondering why I got the call today asking why we didn't have a funding source. So, Dr. Blackburn, if we just vote on it the way it is with no funding source, you figure it out, or do you need direction from us?
That's correct.
Yeah, he has to figure it out.
What's the question?
If we vote on it as is with no funding source for that 25,000, you then, do you need direction, or do you just go find
I'm
it?
good. I figured it out. It's coming from the federally connected.
Okay. Then motion is on the floor, and I'm done with my comments. Thank you,
And
gentlemen.
I'll call the question. Please vote. And the motion approves 5-0. Mr. Susan, you pulled F29. I know you said that you wanted to unpull it. We can't really do that. I do need a motion to approve it, and we need to vote on it individually.
Move to approve F29.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Susan, seconded by Ms. Belford. Any discussion? Please vote. Okay, we can do a voice vote. All in favor of approval of F29, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-0. We will now move on to the action agenda, which includes a public hearing for policy revisions. Thank you, Ms. Enval. We have advertised for a rural development workshop and school board meeting to review the proposed revisions to 4 school board policies. We have already held the rural development workshop and are here tonight at the school board meeting for the public's second opportunity for input in this rulemaking process. This was advertised to occur today in the boardroom during this board meeting. I now declare the public hearing regarding policy revisions open. Dr. Blackburn, will you please present the proposed revisions to the first policy?
The first one is policy 5511, dress and grooming, sponsored by Dr. Beth Theddy, Assistant Superintendent of Student Services. For this policy and for the remaining 3 policies on tonight's agenda, the revision schedule was as follows. Cabinet met on October 30, 2017. The Rural Development Workshop was held on November 21, 2017, at which the public had its first opportunity to provide input. Tonight, December 12, 2017, is the school board meeting during which the second public hearing is held. This policy is being revised to clearly define dress and grooming requirements as they relate to students enrolled in the district. Particular areas of revision include the following. Extreme hairstyles or hair colors that create a disruption are prohibited. Pierced jewelry is no longer limited to the ear. Clear plastic spacers or retainers have been removed under accessories. These proposed revisions encompass the suggested language from Neola.
Thank you, Dr. Blackburn. Is there anyone here who has come to speak on the proposed revisions to policy 5511, dress and grooming? Is there anyone here who has come to speak on policy 5511, dress and grooming? Hearing none, does any school board member wish to discuss this policy? Mr. Susan.
A2, where it talks about extreme hairstyles or hair colors that create a disruption, can you give direction as to what a disruption would look like? It just seems real vague to me. It's just kind of a scary thing. Ms. Enville.
I'm thinking I'm going to defer to Beth Fetty, but we had this discussion already. Nowadays, students are, dyeing the ends of their hair purple or whatever, not really distracting. If they have a 4-foot mohawk that is, obstructing someone's view in a classroom, that would be something that would be distracting. So it'd be a case-by-case basis based on the extremity of the hairstyle.
But hair color unto itself is not the issue. It's the obstruction of view and being obscene.
A disruption in the
Beautiful.
in the classroom.
All right, thank you.
Is that correct? Okay.
That's it. Thank you. Just wanted the clarification.
Any other discussion?
I would just like to state that restricting or defining and restricting reduces the flexibility for our administrators to make determinations based on what best fits their environment. So I don't think we should be specific. We should leave it to the experts to make those decisions.
Yep. Just wanted to make sure.
Anyone else? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the revisions to
Move to
School
approve.
Board Policy 5511, dress and grooming, moved by Mr. Susan, seconded by Ms. Belford. Is there any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes 5-0. Dr. Blackburn.
Next, we move on to School Board Policy 5772, weapons, sponsored by Dr. Theddy. This policy is being revised to clarify the procedures regarding weapons on school board property and to clarify definitions, prohibited activities, and other changes in compliance with applicable Florida law. Particular areas of revision include the following: revised definition of weapon, requirement for students to immediately report knowledge of weapons and threats of violence, express exceptions to the prohibition from openly carrying a handgun or carrying a concealed weapon. These proposed revisions encompass the suggested language from Neola.
Thank you, Dr. Blackburn. Is there anyone here who has come to speak on the proposed revisions to Policy 5772, weapons? Is there anyone here who has come to speak on the proposed revisions to 5772, weapons? Hearing none, does any school board member wish to discuss this policy? Mr. Susan.
No. I'm just getting ready to move to approve the new.
Then I will entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
The revisions to School Board Policy 5772, weapons, moved by Mr. Susan, seconded by Ms. Belford. Please vote. Oh, there it is, okay.
Oh, good. I'm glad we got this one coming for us.
There it is.
And the motion passes 5-0. Dr. Blackburn.
School Board Policy 5136, wireless communications, is sponsored by Mr. Russell Cheatham, Assistant Superintendent of Educational Technology, is next on our list. This policy is being revised to clarify the procedures regarding wireless communication devices usage on school board property and to clarify definitions, prohibited activities, and other changes in compliance with applicable Florida law. Particular areas of revision include the following: revised definition of wireless communication device, guidelines of proper usage of wireless communication devices while on property owned or operated by the board. Authorizes administrators to direct proper usage of wireless communication device. Added language to ensure consistency with other board policies. These proposed revisions encompass the suggested language from Neola.
Thank you, Dr. Blackburn. Is there anyone here who has come to speak on the proposed revisions to 5136, wireless communications? Anyone here who has come to speak on the proposed revisions to 5136, wireless communications? Hearing none, does any school board member wish to discuss this policy? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the
Move to
revisions
approve.
to School Board Policy
Second.
5136, wireless communications, moved by Mr. Susan, seconded by Ms. Deskovich. Please vote. Pam, I do notice that it says 5135 in our e-agenda. Do we need to take a voice vote on 5136? Okay. All in favor of approving school board revisions to School Board Policy 5136, wireless communications, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion passes 5-0. Dr. Blackburn.
The last of our policies this evening is School Board Policy 7217, Weapons, sponsored by Major Andrew Walters, Head of District and School Security. This policy is being revised to clarify the procedures regarding weapons on school board property and to clarify definitions, prohibited activities, and other changes in compliance with applicable Florida law. Particular areas of revision include the following. Defines areas in which individuals are prohibited from openly carrying a handgun or carrying a concealed weapon or firearm. Provides express exceptions to the prohibition from openly carrying a handgun or carrying a concealed weapon in certain circumstances. Adds definitions of administration building and school property. Requires posted notices at each entrance of a school and or school building and on buses and other board-owned vehicles. These proposed revisions encompass the suggested language from Neola.
Thank you, Dr. Blackburn. Is there anyone here who has come to speak on the proposed revisions to 7127, weapons? 7217, weapons. Anyone to speak on proposed revisions to 7217, weapons? Hearing none, does any school board member wish to discuss this policy? I entertain a motion to approve the revisions to School Board Policy
Move to approve.
7217, weapons. Moved by Mr. Susan,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Belford. Please vote. At this time, I will close the public hearing portion of this policy revision process and reopen our regular agenda. Dr. Blackburn.
Next is item G36 on department school initiated agreements.
What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Belford, seconded by Mr. Ziegler. Is there any discussion?
No, sir.
Please vote. And the computers are tired. And the motion passes 5-0. Dr. Blackburn.
The next one is item The next one is item G37, is to authorize the superintendent to advertise for a public hearing to approve the Brevard Public Schools Student Progression Plan for the 2017-2018 school year.
What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Susan, seconded by Mr. Ziegler. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Motion passes 5-0. Dr. Blackburn.
Item G38 is to authorize the superintendent to advertise for a public hearing on January 23rd, 2018, to approve the following attendance boundary changes for the 2018-2019 school year. Croton Elementary to Longleaf Elementary, Kennedy Middle to McNair Middle, Meadow Lane Primary and Meadow Lane Intermediate to Discovery Elementary, Endeavor Elementary and Cambridge Elementary to Saturn Elementary, Melbourne High west of Brandywine to Heritage, and Central Middle to Southwest Middle. Approve special consideration to allow the following to remain at their current school, no transportation provided by the district. Rising 6th and 8th grade students, any current students affected by Melbourne High school attendance boundary change proposal F6.
What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Deskovich, seconded by Mr. Susan. Is there any discussion?
No.
Hearing none, please vote. Motion passes 5-0. We'll now move on to the information agenda, which includes items for board review and will be brought back for action at a subsequent meeting. No action will be taken on these items tonight. Dr. Blackburn.
There are 4 items under the information category.
Does any member wish to discuss an item on the information agenda? Ms. Belford?
I just have a quick comment, not really discussion, but on, actually it's H39 and H41. Not really specific to those items, but just want to give a shout out to our Leading and Learning folks for all of the work that they did in going through the process for the adoption of the science. It was the first time that they have partnered with multiple other districts and had experts in the room looking at each and every one of the levels, and so they put a ton of effort into it, and it was a very collaborative effort, and so I just want to thank them for all of that work that went into that, because I think that speaks volumes about the importance of the adoption and us being able to have confidence in what we're putting in front of our students. So thank you to Dr. Sullivan and Ms. Klein and all of your staffs that assisted along the way.
Thank you, Ms. Belford. Anyone wish to discuss anything on the information agenda?
No.
All right, thank you. We're at staff reports. I don't believe there are any staff reports. I think we've had it plenty. No other public presentations. Time for board member reports and discussion points. In addition to discussion points, I request that board members please include any information requests to be placed on board assigned tasks during this time as well. Does anyone have any board reports? Mr. Ziegler.
Well, I will report that I have now passed the gavel. I am joined the ranks of past chair of the Central Florida Public School Board Coalition. I will still continue to attend those meetings and report. Also report to you that I have been asked by FSBA to come up to Tallahassee on Thursday to testify before the Constitutional Revision Commission Education Committee on some things they're going to discuss, and we decided I opted out because I would get maybe 3 minutes if I could speak, and to drive up 5 hours up and back to maybe get 3 minutes to speak, and they don't believe there's anything that we could say at this point that would keep some of those items from passing out of the Education Committee. They will come back to the Constitutional Revision Commission as an entire body of 37 members in January and or February. It should be completed by the end of December, but because of the storm, they've scheduled 2 sets of meetings in January and I think 2 sets of meetings in February. So I'm going to keep tabs on that, and they're going to ask me to come up and speak at that point in time, which makes a lot more sense that if I could plan ahead, I'd come up and go up for several days and work with Capital City and talk with some of our lobbyists or legislators at the same time, rather than just taking a shot at a 3-minute speech. It'll probably have no effect. So if it's okay with all of you, I passed on the trip on this Thursday, and we'll do so January and or February.
Blackburn, do you have anything?
No, I was going to speak a little bit about the Constitution Revision Commission, and Mr. Ziegler has already addressed that, so I will defer. I have a legislative update, but nothing of significance that you guys probably are not already filled in for. Would have been more for our public that is dwindling or dwindled at this point. So I'll work on getting that communication out through a different mode of communication.
Thank you, Ms. Blackburn. Ms. Deskovich?
I have two things. One, while you all are at FSBA, I just wanted to report back on my trip. I went to an education summit put on by the Foundation for Excellence in Education. I did not take notes like Misty did. I have some notes. All of the breakout sessions, they had some really helpful sessions this year on graduation rates and early literacy. We heard from the Secretary of Education. We heard from some really amazing leaders throughout education. A gentleman from Amazon who's over all of innovation spoke about alignment with industry coming out of high school. So there was some really informative sessions there. They're all recorded. I can email you a link, at least to the ones that I attended that I thought were helpful if you're interested. Just wanted to report on that since I was there kind of in my school board capacity, even though it did not cost our district any funds. I do want to be clear on that. The other thing I want to bring up, it's been kind of on my mind, and I probably should have emailed you all beforehand. No surprises. I was speaking with a couple of school secretaries this week, and they've been emailing me back and forth over this whole raise issue because they're not included in BFT or in 1010. And they were at first concerned they weren't going to get a raise. They said we forget them all the time, which I don't know if that's true. I haven't been here, but they said they feel forgotten a lot because they are not part of a union. So I've been emailing them regularly, and then I told them recently, because I had conferred with staff, that it looked like they were going to get a 1.5% raise. But now I'm being told because 1010 has declined our offer and BFT has declined our offer, they were going to bring before us tonight, staff was to give the staff that's not part of a union the 1.5% raise, but now that's been pulled. And it really bothers me. They were excited about their 1.5% raise and thankful for it, and now they're not going to get it because the unions said they don't want it. And so as a board, I want us to have a discussion, maybe not tonight because it's so late, but at some point soon, on why we have to, why the rest of the district has to follow suit with the two unions when they didn't say they didn't want the raise. Make sense? Thoughts on anybody else?
I'll give you mine because I agree with you 100%. And I think, I've said this multiple times in our workshops and things that, we have to treat each entity as a separate entity. And it's ultimately up to the superintendent and the cabinet to bring those recommendations to us. That's not for us to decide. That's for him to decide. And certainly a recommendation for everyone outside of a bargaining, a CBA or a collective bargaining agreement can certainly be brought at any time. It doesn't have to be during the negotiations. It can be before, it can be during, it can be after. Truly doesn't have any, and it shouldn't have any reflection on it. I understand the reasons why we do the way we do, and we try to get everyone on the same page. But your point, I think, is well taken, that we don't always have to do that. And certainly we can have more discussion about that going forward in our as we look forward at the new budgeting cycle to perhaps figure out how a better timeline for that is, because I would agree with you. I don't know if anybody else has any comments, Mr. Ziegler?
Obviously, we want to make sure that we're fair to our non-bargaining people and that we don't wind up giving them any less than we do somebody else. But I would assume, I believe it's true, that we could make a decision with a caveat that if we settled higher, we can then make up the difference. That being the case, and if that is true, I would have hoped maybe we would have at least engaged at this point in time. However, since it hasn't been on was pulled from the agenda and not before us, we can't do that right now. So we're off until January. So is that correct?
Yep.
Yes.
January 12th, Emily,
Yeah, so
23rd.
And we can't just, could we? Or it has to be on the
Well, I was
agenda?
going to ask the question, maybe this is a question for Ms. Enval. Is it possible right now for the employees not represented by either one of those two groups, is it possible for the board to get some kind of direction right now? Motion, discussion, and approve?
I think you can, but we have to follow the advertising and the agenda. I don't know if the reasoning behind it was so that everybody is treated equally. I don't know.
The reasoning, assumption on my part, taking a look at how the 10-10 vote went and knowing that we're at impasse with Brevard Federation of Teachers, just made an assumption on my part to pull the salary adjustment for employees not represented by a bargaining unit. So that said, no, I didn't bring it this evening. But so the question is, can the board now make a motion, discuss it, vote to allow that to happen?
I would say not if it was on the agenda.
Okay,
And not if we properly advertised.
Let me ask you a little deeper question then. What is the legal boundary that forces us to vote on non-bargaining pay increases? A CBA is something we
Right,
sign.
right, absolutely,
And we
absolutely.
actually, it's a contract that we actually enter into with
right.
that union. The
10-10 is the
superintendent,
same.
with whichever union it is, we have two CBAs. The superintendent owns the rest of the people under the
Right.
non-bargaining thing, and we have already approved a budget that allows him to spend that budget as within those means. I don't see the reason for us to have to vote to approve a non-bargaining employee for a raise or any sort of other numerary compensation, because eventually it all falls under the budget that we've approved for
already.
him. I guess I'm wondering where that legal boundary is, because I can't figure out where that would be.
It's probably just practice. It's probably just been practice that you usually approve your unions based on your
Unions,
contracts,
yes.
and then everybody else just because you want to make sure that you have some affirmative action that you've approved the raises for the other employees. So it's probably just common practice.
And that being said, I would defer to Dr. Blackburn, and, it's your budget. We've given you that authority. I mean, that is your role. So certainly you may want to confer with legal a little bit more, but we can't vote on anything tonight, it sounds like, but I don't think we probably have to in that case. That's my point.
Go ahead.
if I may ask the question a different way, well, because I do believe we have to vote on that. And I do understand that we're supposed to have something on an agenda 7 days ahead of time and advertised. It's my understanding that other elected bodies, the county commission, city councils, that they frequently come in and will make a motion during the meeting. Are we strictly prohibited from doing that if it's not on our agenda? Is
So-
there a statute that regulates us differently than other elected bodies that we cannot bring this motion right now?
Not that I'm aware of. I
Yeah,
mean,
because I would think under new business, you could bring anything.
That's what I'm, yeah. that's
and you
where
can
I'm going.
you can change your agenda as well.
Correct. So I don't, that's why I didn't think that there was specifically statute that prohibited us from being it. I think it's,
Transparency.
that's why we do all that, but if we believe it's urgent and time sensitive and can justify it, and I believe being a meeting just before the holidays, I think it's urgent and shows proper respect for those employees, not getting wrapped up in the union negotiations, that I would make the motion that we approve the superintendent's intended recommendation for non-bargaining raises of, I believe it was 1.5%, pending an adjustment to be fair with and consistent with whatever we decide for the unions.
I've heard a motion that I believe is
Second.
that Mr. Ziegler has made to direct the superintendent to raise salaries of non-bargaining employees 1.5% in that general area. I think he added some stuff on at the end, but I don't think it was relevant to the actual motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Deskovich. Now, discussion. Ms. Belford.
Just one point of concern on that other stuff that was said at the end that you weren't sure was relevant to the actual motion. So the statement was to advise the superintendent to move forward with the recommended 1.5% increase for non-bargaining employees. Mr. Ziegler then added on with the caveat that an adjustment could be made at a later time to keep things equal among the two bargaining units and the non-bargaining unit.
Correct.
My concern is, and in saying this, I'm not suggesting this is the way that we're going, but I feel like we have to have this conversation or it's going to turn into a huge mess at some point. In the event that the two bargaining units end up with not getting 1.5%, are we then going to take the 1.5% away from the non-bargaining? Do you see where I'm going, though? I think we need to clarify the motion that we have the opportunity to reopen that recommendation for 1.5%, but not necessarily tie it to.
That's probably
I
a
get you,
safer-
and that's kind of why
safer
I think I
statement.
didn't say the extra words,
Yeah.
because
I'm
this,
okay with that.
this allows Dr. Blackburn to do just that. I mean, this is just giving him approval to give non-bargaining employees 1.5% so that we can get it before the holidays, but certainly it can come back and be revised with another motion down the road.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Anybody else have comments? Mr. Susan? Nope. Anybody? All right, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion to allow the superintendent to provide salary increases to non-bargaining employees of 1.5%, please say, please vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, the motion passes 5-0. Is there any other board reports or discussion items? The only thing I will add is that during the discussion that, of Mr. Theodore's and the satellite track, I want to be very clear that the disappointment is squarely on my shoulders. I certainly accept full responsibility for that because I certainly could have avoided that by looking forward and asking the right questions. So that was what I was kind of going at, just to make sure that that is clear. And is there anything else? Dr. Blackburn, do you have a superintendent's report?
Sir.
Hearing none, we are adjourned. Merry Christmas.